the South Burlington City Council meeting of Tuesday, September 7th. And we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Tim, would you like to?
Yes.
From this side.
About face. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, item 2 is instructions on exiting building in case of emergency and review of the technology options.
So as we are in a new space, just want to remind everyone in the room and who may come to a future meeting that there are 2 exits at the back of the room. You can go out of either and then go out of either the back door or the main door to the in front of the library. I also want to share a couple of updates on technology use in this new room as we kind of figure out all of these details. One, to the folks joining on GoToMeeting, thank you for being here. I hope you can hear all of us. I know I am personally muted, but the sound is being picked up by Town Meeting TV. The chat per the council procedures that were adopted last time. Is the mic working on? Okay. The chat in GoToMeeting will now be disabled. We are asking for anyone who wants to make comment on the record to unmute themselves, show their face, and make comment publicly. I will be monitoring the chat, so if you are interested in speaking during the meeting, please just send a quick message through the chat to me, and I will be passing those names on to Chair Reilly. And then finally, in the room, if you are interested in speaking, please come up to the microphone at the podium. These mics are very sensitive, so be gentle with them. If you're touching them, please don't pick them up. But we will be sure to adjust to be able to hear your comments as well. That's what I want to share.
Okay, great, thank you. Item 3 is agenda review. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order of agenda items? And I believe we have one. Megan?
Yes, I'd like to add an executive session as a new 18C for the purposes of discussing a personnel matter under VSA Chapter 313, Section A3, with no action to be taken.
Okay, you're ready for that? We have to vote on that, yeah. Ready for that vote? All in favor of an executive session at the end of the meeting? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that carries 5-0. Thank you. Are there any other changes or additions?
No, but since you were mentioning technology stuff, do you know what the guest Wi-Fi password is?
I do.
In the olden days, we'd have a sign in the room. and it would-
180, no.
It's SBBT guest, everything capitalized but the UEST. 180 exclamation point. And for those in the room, if you want to see it, it's written down on the podium. Capital SBVTG, then lowercase est to make guest, 180 exclamation point.
Thank you.
Okie doke. Thank you. Are there any comments and questions from the public not related to the agenda? Please come up.
Boy, I don't know how to do.
You know, if you prefer, you could go to the table where the mic is a little lower and then we can see you. And please introduce yourself. Or introduce yourselves, since there's 2 of you.
My name's Kathy Allery,
You pull that microphone up close to you if possible.
or I can try to speak louder. My name's Kathy Allery, and I'm Karen Allery, and we live next door at Allard Square. And we're not here representing Cathedral Square. We're here representing ourselves and other residents. We're here because of the traffic problem on Market Street, the lack of signage. I personally have been trying for 3 years to get a crossing light or something on Market and Mary Street. I've been almost hit, like within inches in the middle of the road, 2 times last week, and at least 3 other times or 4 other times over the last 3 years. Cars go speeding up and down the street like it's a drag strip. There's 2 speed limit signs, 1 at each end. There's none in this area. The the yellow sign for the crosswalk is sort of obstructed by a tree. In our building, we have several people. There's another woman in a wheelchair type thing, but it's a 55 and plus community. There are several people using walkers, and they can't get across the street without almost getting hit. In fact, Saturday night, one of our residents, she was walking, and the car came so close to hitting her, she fell backwards.
Mm.
It was at night. She was not in dark colored clothes. It was a dark colored car. The person did stop. But she got all bruised up. And I just, I've been going back and forth with Justin Rabideau for the last 3 years. I was in really good contact with the previous town manager about it. They did put a barrel in the middle of the road, but the road is so narrow, people were hitting it, and it got destroyed. Or they would take it and put it on the grass. I have enough health issues that I really don't want to be killed by a car. And it was Thursday afternoon and Friday morning. We were almost hit crossing. And Thursday afternoon, I came right in, spoke to the lady at the desk. I said, I was here about a month and a half ago when you first opened. I said, I believe her name was Andrea. The woman's like, that's me. She did up an email to you.
Yep.
I had not heard a word.
I believe Justin followed up with you after that. I asked him to follow up with you.
The second time when I came in Thursday afternoon, yes, Justin called me 10 after 8 Friday morning. And I told her, and I will be, until something gets done about that crosswalk. I will be here every single time that we are almost, or someone in our building is almost hit. She goes, well, I cross up here all the time and nothing happens. Yes, because the cars can see you crossing there. When they can't see you, they floor it and come around the curve.
This is crossing Market Street.
Crossing Market Street
Okay.
at the Mary Street, just on the other side of Allard Square.
Right.
Because our door
So
is
what
right
will be
there.
the extension of Mary Street? And, okay. That's a problem too, crossing Mary Street.
No,
No, it's just crossing
Market
Market
Street.
Street.
to the other side. Because a lot of us,
Okay, I'm
I
just,
go to Trader Joe's all the time.
Right.
So, yeah, and the other problem too is people in front of the building parking on the wrong side of the street and doing U-turns. They get out. It's illegal to park on the other side of the street. They're doing it all the time. And then they do a U-turn right in the middle of the road.
I thought there were some parking slots on the other side of the street.
There is. There's parking.
But you're saying people are parking,
They're parking the wrong
They're
way to
parking
curve.
either way. They park in front of this building, which is headed.
oh, so they
They're
cross.
heading east.
Okay.
There should be a ticket.
They cross the traffic and park.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
and which is illegal.
Okay.
And
I
doing a
thought
U-turn is
parking in
illegal.
a no parking zone. Okay.
So, those are the issues, and I will be here every meeting. And tomorrow night, I'm going to the bike and pedestrian meeting. Now that you're right next door, I can do it.
Well, good.
And hopefully, maybe next meeting or the following meeting, I may do a presentation. So,
Well, we appreciate
That
you
is it.
coming in, and I share your concern. So we'll see what we can do.
that's what I've been told for the last 3 years. But
Well,
I know that's all
what
you
else
can
I
say.
can say, Kathy.
I know that, but I know that's all you can say. I mean, it's, it's not like tomorrow there's going to be a crossing light on, where we push a button and the light flashes or something to get people's attention.
Mhm.
That's not going to happen tomorrow.
Is
It
that what
hasn't happened in 3 years.
Is that what you would prefer?
That's what we would like. And that's what we've been asking for the last 3 years. Everybody in our people in our building. And hopefully, I just brought this to people's attention yesterday
Mhm.
that the meeting was today. And next month, I will have a better time. I'll know more in advance, and I'll have more residents here to let you know actually how many people it's happening to. Because it's not just the two of us.
Okay. Well, just so you know, our next meeting is the 20th of September.
The 20th of September?
It's usually on a Monday night, unless the Monday is
Labor Day. Yep.
a national holiday or a state holiday.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay? We
Hmm?
meet twice a month.
Oh, well, it's okay. Well, we have another issue, but we've taken up enough time for tonight.
Feel free, you've got the floor.
Okay. Do you want to hand it in? Yep. I did do a little, because I don't sleep.
Oh, dear.
But the other thing that we have a concern about is on the east side, west side of the school parking lot,
Mm-hmm.
they put up a no exit sign. She has pictures.
Thank you.
And the no exit sign is white background on black, and it's about 8-9 feet tall. There's a picture of Karen in front of it, and cars come out of the school that area all the time. And with our residents coming out of the parking garage, people coming to this building back and forth from Mary Street, and the electric cars, there's going to be an accident. I did mention it to the bike and pedestrian people, just because. And what I think should have been done is on the last page of that is the do not enter sign, or emergency vehicles only, which people are still going to do it. And I know for a fact, because I have a friend whose grandchildren go to Rick Marcotte School, that the parents have been told not to exit out. That's exit.
Enter or exit.
Yeah, enter or exit.
And they come speeding.
And this is close to Mary Street.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just
This
trying to get
isn't-
oriented because I don't hang around here
Yeah,
too much.
this is right in the back.
No.
Right
here.
there. Okay.
Over here.
Over here.
I get lost inside.
It is over there. Yeah,
It's right there.
it's right there. Yep.
If you're heading out towards Mary Street, it's that
Mhm.
little opening right after the storm runoff with the wooden fence.
Uh-huh.
It's right there.
And then the stop sign she's standing in front of is right here in front of the building on the west side,
The side street right here.
east side. I don't know if it has a name.
I think it's school.
School
Well,
Street?
they have to name it, right?
Yeah,
But
Right.
right now it's, I think, referred to as School Street.
yeah. But that exit over there, that's the stop sign.
As a
And
comparison as to the height of the sign.
Okay.
And one day, I was up early enough. I counted 25 cars coming out of that no exit.
That no exit sign?
The UPS
we live on
drivers
that
do
back
it.
side of the building.
We live,
Right.
The UPS drivers do it. SSTA drivers do it.
I might suggest that you also share this with the school board. Just because they would have the opportunity to really educate parents and UPS delivery people, as well as potentially their own
Well-
faculty and staff
For the first few weeks that was up, the UPS has done it. But now that you're opened here, they have to make deliveries here, so they don't do it anymore.
Oh, well, that's good. Okay.
Okay,
But
so-
that's just,
yep.
and I'm not trying to kick the can down the
No.
road, but that's a separate entity. And
I'm
it would be
just-
good for them to hear from you, your concerns. We can also share it with them, but I think from hearing from citizens is a little more.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
will get that information to them.
Now, can I ask a question? Is what was initially our entrance to our parking lot and
Uh-huh.
our garage, is that going to be a street where anyone can
Comes
use
from
it?
Mary Street, around the back of Allard Square, over to this way where the,
I don't think that's a street. There will be the extension of Mary Street, I believe, once sidewalks and some of the safety things are built on Mary Street,
and
and they
other,
figure out, or,
other
other
issues.
issues.
right, there's lots of issues with that. That's why it's not open yet.
I
Right.
know, we know,
But
we
I
talked
think
to-
that's
we-
the plan.
yeah.
There's a lot.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, we talked to residents on that street, so, yeah. And
Well, they
resi-
have their own set of,
Yeah,
Yeah, and-
don't drive down my street.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
So, yeah, we just, because we got to go back and tell everybody in our building, what happened here tonight, so. Okay,
Great.
we're done.
Thank
Did you
you.
have a question
Thank
or
you.
comment?
I was just going to say that enforcement is also something that you should always feel free to call the police.
And we get, what do you want us to do about it?
Okay.
The
well then
per-
I'm
the
talking to
dispatcher-
city manager.
The dispatcher will say, what do you want us to do about it?
Right. Thank you.
And, yeah,
So we gave up
Enforce
calling
it.
the police.
Yeah.
South
Yeah,
Burlington
that's what-
Police doesn't rank too high on my list.
I'm sorry to hear that, but maybe we
Ellen,
can.
if I can add something, the person I work with at the United Way also mentioned how difficult and dangerous it is to pull out of the parking places across the street with cars coming in from Dorset Street around that curve. You
Yeah.
can't see them
I
coming.
can attest to that. I was here at 8 a.m. this morning, and I had to be very careful getting out of my car
Yeah.
and very careful pulling out. In fact, I got out of my car and then walked back to the sidewalk and went to the crosswalk at the school street because it was the safest place, because everybody was coming to drop off their kids.
Right.
Plus, there were commuters and stuff. I mean, there was a fair amount of traffic, so it begs for your attention when there is a high traffic volume.
may I add something about the signage? There's no school zone sign.
Okay.
Meant to mention that, sorry.
Yeah. Well,
Okay, thank you.
okay.
you.
Thank you very much for coming out. At least it wasn't pouring rain. It was a good night to,
It's
Tool
next
over here.
door.
yeah. I know, but it was raining pretty hard last night, so. Are there any other comments, excuse me, and questions from the public? Anyone on GoToMeeting? Okay. Thank you, Karen. Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi.
Shelley Matthias, hi.
Hi. My name is
We can't
Shelley.
hear you, so.
Speakers in the room turned
I've got my mute button off. Can you hear me
wait a
now?
minute. Shelley, nobody can hear you yet.
Hmm.
We're correcting that technical issue.
Yeah. I'm sorry, my mute button is off, so I'm not on mute.
I can hear you, Shelley, so I know your mute button is off, but they can't hear you.
Okay. Well, if it's technically difficult, I know we're sort of running against your time, so I can come back on the
Ashley
20th.
Parker can hear, so people on,
Is this
So it's random.
muted? Whatever.
Shouldn't be coming through my.
No?
Oh, there we go. Is that how you? Is that how you guys want me to do it, or should it be coming through a different speaker?
Feedback from the microphones.
Do you want me to say something so you know if it's
Sorry,
doing
Shelley,
anything?
Can't hear you.
Stand by.
Okay. I can come back.
Technical difficulties.
that's right.
right.
the
Oh, that's
theme
right,
of
'cause I had
Well, if
a-
you have direct TV, if ever it's raining, it goes off
I
in the
can't,
middle of
I will,
US.
I think I'll come
Rural,
in
you know.
person. I will come in. I'll come in person to the next meeting. I couldn't do it tonight,
Shelley,
so
if
I'll
you
come
can
in.
hear us, just hold on a sec. We're working on it.
Okay.
Shelley, can you try again?
Sure. Is this any better? If it, for those who can hear me,
Hold on a sec, Shelley. Sorry.
I'm fine coming in person to the next meeting.
I think
It's
I hear
not in-
her from your iPad. Oh,
Don't worry. Give it a check.
Well,
Lots of
Matt, we may
details.
not be done by 10:20. That's what I was saying.
I don't like your skepticism too.
When I leave the house, I always say to Tim, well, I don't think it'll be real late tonight. And he goes, yeah, right.
that's what my husband says too, yeah. Make no
Ever the
promises.
optimist here.
We have remotes here. What are the remotes for?
Seriously.
I don't know what the remotes are. Oh, they're
two
probably the
remotes.
two TV remotes. Don't.
Yeah.
Don't.
You don't know? I hesitate, yeah.
Seriously, I can come in person to the next meeting. I don't want to waste your
There are
time.
so many details to make this room work appropriately.
Yeah.
So we just have to be patient.
So it's not a problem for me to come to your meeting.
Bill,
Okay.
Unfortunately, they can't hear you, Shelley.
So,
Shelley, it might be good if you wait, Shelley, it might be good, Shelley, it might be
Yes?
good if you waited so that they know how to fix the problem, so it doesn't happen if I can't speak.
Scheduled
I would do that.
to only be here via Zoom or via go to meeting tonight. So
So we need to work
we
this
do
out.
need to work it
Right.
out.
I'm just wondering, though, if we can move on to announcements and city managers report and then come back to this. It's just a suggestion, but if you want to wait, we can. I
That might speed things up.
Okay.
mean,
Do you guys feel okay if we keep going and come back to this in the back of the room?
Um,
All right, Shelley,
I-
you can hear us.
if the- Yeah, I can
nod
hear
your
you.
head. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, but here's the thing.
Okay.
We're going to go on to the next agenda item while the technical folks in the back of the room try and figure this out.
Can I just say, I have family visiting from New Jersey and I stepped away to do this, so I'd rather just
Our
come in
interpreter.
person.
She said.
Okay?
Shelley, why don't you enter in the chat box?
I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Okay? I'll see you on the 20th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry.
We're very sorry.
That's okay. This happens. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Roseanne.
Unfortunately, it does happen. Okay.
So we are going to keep going, but we are going to try and figure this out in the room because we will need it for later agenda items.
Is there, do you wish to speak? Oh, okay, okay. Okay, so we'll move on to item 5, announcements and the city manager's report. So starting from my left, Tom?
I just want to give a special thank you to John Wilking of the Rotary for working with the South Burlington Police Department to host a lovely South Burlington Police Department thank you and appreciation banquet at Wheeler. And Councilor Emery did a great job giving some nice remarks to open up the ceremony. So it was a wonderful evening, marred with a little rain to begin with, but other than that, it was a great night, and I'm really glad that it happened.
Okay.
Yeah, I will just add my voice to Tom's. I want to thank the South Burlington Rotary Club. I thought that you did a wonderful job. rain cleared up just in time, I think, and it turned out to be a really nice evening. So, and I think it's nice that the families can come, since they are so often not with their families when, the rest of us can enjoy it. I just wanted to say that in addition to what our two, Kathy and Carol Allery, said, I have been working with the Chamberlain Elementary School principal. Her name is Holly Ruel, because we also have an issue with traffic in front of Chamberlain. And I don't think it's unusual when you have a deadline, kind of a cutoff time when parents have to get their children to school. And many parents feel uneasy about letting their children go on the bus with COVID and masking. You get a lot more cars, and you get people trying to get to a place at a certain time. And it is a kind of it makes for a dangerous mix. And so what we have made a request, or Holly Ruel did to Justin, to go through the CCRPC process, is to actually have a red blinking light at the entrance to Chamberlain School on White Street. Simply to catch the driver's attention, this is a crosswalk, and we have to let people cross safely here. And I think that, it's something I just wanted to say, because we did hear from the two residents of Allard Square that it can make for just a really bad mix, with school and everybody in their cars, trying to get to a place at a specific time. So fingers crossed that it will work, that they'll get the grant, and that they can have a solution for that crosswalk in front of Chamberlain School. It's been a years-long issue. It's not new, and it's just something to consider.
Okay. Matt?
Just wanted to add that I also was at the event at Wheeler Park. What a great place to hold an event of any kind, especially to be with the South Burlington Police Department and all their families, and Councilor Emery and Councilor Chittenden.
Okay. Tim?
I was out of town, but I did do some house inspections for the BCA and assisted in the report. Wasn't me, was it?
No.
And now that I'm deaf, I have
Yeah.
nothing else to report.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have also been rather active with the BCA and spending Saturdays and Sundays visiting people's homes, and then Thursdays, although not this Thursday, voting on our different recommendations. So it's a very time-intensive process, but I think a very important one. And everyone has really stepped up to take their turns at visiting and coming to all the meetings and participating. And I thank all of the members, because it is, in some ways, a little thankless, but I've been involved and happy to do so. CCTA also had a meeting, and one of the things I know they sent to Jesse and me, with this, new technology and the efforts to have a process at all the communities where
Town
you,
meeting TV, no. CCTV.
right,
Yeah.
town meeting TV, sorry. It's been a challenge to provide the kind of interface with GoToMeeting or Zoom, as well as the in-person work with all the communities, but they're working on it. And I think, except for this one glitch tonight, we're pretty lucky because we built it into the new system. It's a little harder for the other communities. But that said, it's taking more effort, and we have 2 people at these meetings. And so they are sending or recommending an MOU that lays out potentially some additional charges to cover this additional technical assistance that I think is pretty important. So I'm just sort of putting it out there. Comcast dollars keep going down because fewer people are buying their products. They're just streaming on their own. And so I'm sort of pitching that ahead of our budget discussions, that will be another issue for us to deal with. And I know in the past, we've also talked about having planning commission meetings online, like the DRB and our committee or the council. So that's another just item as a heads up. Thank you.
Madam Chair, do you have any more information about Gene Richards as director of the airport?
I don't have any more than what you've read in the newspaper. I believe he is going before the Burlington City Council Thursday to plead his case. My understanding is his concern largely is the process. I don't believe he thinks he's going to be reinstated, and that probably isn't his end game, but he does, I believe, want to have the process discussed, and as some of the news articles have indicated, I agree with him that at least the review process is lacking, it appears. So that is an area for improvement with the next director. But that's all I know. I mean, he's on non-paid well, I guess he was terminated, but there was a period of time when it was non-paid. So that's all I can. It's in the hands of the Burlington City Council at this point. Okay, manager's report.
Thank you. So a number of updates for you all in the community tonight. As usual, I'll start with our COVID monitoring. So we are continuing to track the local COVID data very closely. For the last 2-week period, we saw 39 new cases in South Burlington. That's actually slightly down from what we had been seeing in early August. So we're continuing to track that, but really do thank everyone who's here in the audience and participating for masking up, and encourage everyone to encourage their loved ones to get vaccinated. Tangentially related to the pandemic, I mentioned this last time, but did again want to say that if folks in our community are having financial challenges paying their utility bills or their property taxes, we do have tools to help. So if you are having trouble paying your utility bills, please get in touch with Public Works. You also should have gotten a stuffer in your recent utility bill. And if you're having trouble paying your property taxes, we can set up payment plans with you, and folks should reach out to Martha Lyons, our assessor. Delinquency notices will be going out at the end of this week for the first installment of taxes. We have 360 notices going out. That sounds like a lot, but with almost 7,800 parcels in the city, it's actually under 5% of our parcels. So something we, again, are tracking pretty closely. Moving on from that, it is with great sadness that I share that Justin Rabideau has submitted his letter of resignation effective January 7th, 2022. He is giving us 4 months to ease the transition, to get us through the policies and strategies process, the FY23 budget, and allow us to have a very intentional process to find our next public works director. If I could just take a moment to say Justin was a big part of why I came to South Burlington. He is known statewide as being a leader in public works administration. He has done huge amounts to move us forward, move our infrastructure forward in South Burlington, and will be big shoes to fill. So please join me in thanking him over the next months to come. We will also start immediately working on doing an intentional recruitment process, and hope to involve lots of members from the community in that process as well. Pending your approval tonight of the policy priorities and strategies process, I will be sending out to the council a doodle poll request to find that day that we can all meet to do that prioritization work together at the end of October. And I'm very thankful to the committees who have already started having their conversations around that effort. So I think there's going to be great data flowing to you all. A couple of project and events updates. Paving has started on the Allen Road shared use path. There's some markings left to do, but that project is moving along fairly quickly. So we should see the completion of that in the next month or so. And thanks to a recent council conversation about the unlicensed dogs, the police sent out that letter, as we discussed in the beginning of August, and as a result, we've had 134 new dogs and cats registered. So really made a dent in that process. So thank you for that recommendation. And thanks to the city clerk for making that happen. We are looking for police officers. As you've probably read nationally, recruiting police officers right now is a very significant challenge. And we would love some local folks to apply and be South Burlington residents and police officers. So if folks are interested, please reach out, or if folks know anyone who they would like to encourage, that would be great. And then I have a couple of public events to mention. On Saturday, as most folks probably know, is the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks in New York City. The fire department will be hosting a memorial event from 6:30 to 7:30 that evening at Overlook Park. As somebody who lived and worked in Manhattan on 9/11, it's always something I think about every year. There will also be a hybrid public forum on September 23rd at 5:30 here in this room, and a virtual option on the Hubbard Park natural area and concepts for that, planning over time, how to use that space for passive recreation. So that's September 23rd at 5:30, conceptual planning on the Hubbard Park recreation and natural area. Our Preservation Partnership and Audubon Vermont and Vermont Land Trust are hosting an opportunity for landowners to come and learn about conserving their property. That will be on September 18th at the Nordic Farms in Charlotte in the morning. There's more information on our website about that event if folks are interested. Senior Center is now offering weekly meals and has events every weekday throughout the month. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned to our Senior Center page. And then finally, September is Program Palooza at the library. The library team has put together 30 days of programming every day in September. So they have a great slate of things to come and explore our new facility with. Especially wanted to call out that tomorrow evening at 6, they will be hosting a panel of veterans who served in Afghanistan to educate the community about that lived experience then and that lived experience in the last month. And that's really, I want to highlight that because it's suggestive of what the library team is looking to do in the months and years to come, which is be very responsive to the events that are currently happening in our communities. So thank you for letting me share.
Great, that's a lot going on. That's terrific. Item 6, consent agenda. We have 5 items: disbursements, numerous minutes, September 21st, November 16th, June 7th, June 21st, July 19th, July 23rd, August 3rd, and August 17th.
The dam broke open.
Yeah. Then we have an authorization to negotiate a contract for design of Spear Street bicycle and pedestrian improvements, approval of the policy priorities and strategies process that City Manager Baker was just alluding to, and approve the National Library of Medicine grant for Veterans Telehealth Project application.
So I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Are there any comments or quick questions? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So the consent agenda passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, moving on to interviews with applicants for appointment to the South Burlington Sexton Committee.
So if can I introduce this? Just
Yes,
quickly?
you may.
So I believe if the microphone on GoToMeeting is working, we have one candidate, Chris Train, on GoToMeeting, and then one candidate, Maureen O'Brien, in the room with us. And just a reminder to the council that, and then we have two current members, Peter Taylor and Donna Kinvell, coming in at your next meeting to talk about this as well. You can appoint as many sextons as you would like. There's no hard number the way there is for other committees. So that's what I wanted to share. Thanks.
Great. Well, I'm thrilled that we have 2 candidates because this was a kind of forgotten committee until Tom Chittenden wanted to join it. So perhaps your involvement on that committee, helped advertise it. So, Maureen, since you're here, please come forward. And again, thank you for your interest. And we read your application. I think it's kind of interesting that this sort of researching genealogy has sort of connected you to thinking about making sure our cemeteries are kept up and in good shape. So I think that's a nice connection that I'm not sure our Sexton committee ever had. So I thank you for kind of connecting those two issues. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself? And
Well, I'm a lifelong South Burlington resident, grew up on Old Farm Road, and 6th or 7th generation Vermonter. Both sets
You need to
of,
put the microphone next to your mouth, maybe, and
maybe that'll be better, yeah.
right into it,
Um,
yeah.
So 6th or 7th generation Vermonter, both sets of great-grandparents came to Burlington, or South Burlington in the mid to late 1800s. I got interested in genealogy and family history and the history of South Burlington from my grandmother, who grew up at the top of Van Sicklin Road, and whose house is still there. That she
in
grew
the
up
stone house?
No, well, she lived there for a while, but she actually was born in the house just after Muddy Brook on the right-hand side, the little brick house. She would tell stories about, going to school up on Heinsberg Road and how the soldiers during the War of 1812, there was an encampment of them on the brow of Old Farm Road. So she would send us down there looking for treasures and things like that. And I've gotten involved with the genealogy library in Essex a number of years ago. I manage their Facebook page. And now that I'm retired, I have time, and my husband and I go around the state and clean gravestones for our ancestors.
Wonderful.
So
That's great.
Kind of seeing, I had talked to Tom probably about a year ago now about this, and I saw the opening. I said, well, now's the time.
Great. No, well, thank you. Are there any questions?
Talking with Tom, did you ask or did you learn what is involved, what you'll be doing on this committee?
Yeah, I had talked to Donna a couple weeks ago, and it doesn't seem to be a lot of heavy lifting, but there's a lot of opportunities. The Vermont Old Cemetery Association, it's a group of volunteers that travel around the state and clean grave sites, gravestones, graveyards. They do grants, so there's a lot of possibilities out there.
Wonderful. Thank you.
That's
Thank you,
wonderful.
Maureen.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, do you have any questions for us?
No, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You kind of meet when you feel you need to, and
Well, great.
projects as they come up.
All right. Well, our process is we will hear from, is it Chris Thane? And then the two other individuals are already on the committee. So we typically have them continue unless they've really messed up or something.
I just want to say I'm really excited that you're interested in doing this. You're perfect for the committee, and you definitely have my vote.
Thanks, Tom.
So we'll make a decision. I don't know if we can do that tonight. We probably can.
You can.
So maybe we'll just vote tonight.
Okay.
I don't think it needs to be in the cloak of darkness. We can. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For your interest.
So we do have,
So Chris Thrain is,
has the microphone issue on GoToMeeting been resolved?
oh, well,
So
can we
draft
see
Roseanne
Chris?
Shepherd?
There's Chris.
Hello.
Again, you're bringing another aspect, I think, to the Sexton's committee that I don't know if they've ever had anyone who was a licensed funeral director. I think that is kind of a really interesting additional perspective that would really be valuable and helpful to that committee and our efforts to either both improve and, maintain our current cemeteries, and certainly having a hobby is exploring old cemeteries would, we got a couple, so you can, use your expertise and interest, I think, in helping that committee.
So we're not going to be able to hear Chris.
No, we can't hear you, but
If we were to turn off our microphones and just listen to your laptop, is that something we could do, or is that danger? Don't touch the microphones.
Gentleman in the back, if we turned off these mics and turned up my laptop to hear him, would that work?
Avoid feedback.
so we can actually push
Mic's
the
off.
mic button off. Okay.
Yeah.
Are they all off?
Hey, Chris, I'm going to turn off my mic and turn you up. We're going to stop talking and see if we can hear you without the feedback. Sorry about all this confusion.
That's okay. Can you hear me? Excellent.
So, Chris, can you hear us? Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Okay, so the challenge here is we can't be heard and hear you at the same time. So I'm going to stop
Okay.
talking and unmute you and share with us what your interest in the Sextons and whatever you would like us to know about yourself. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. Hi, folks. My name is Chris Thrain. I've lived in South Burlington for 30 years now. Raised my daughter here and gone through all the South Burlington schools. I've been a licensed funeral director in Burlington for going on 22 years now. And one of my enjoyable hobbies is exploring historical cemeteries. And whenever I travel to a different state, if I have the time, I get on Google Maps and find old historical cemeteries, some where the gravestones have fallen over, and uncover them and just learn more about them. And this position I saw posted, and it just looked very interesting as I have explored a few of the older cemeteries around South Burlington, and very much would like to give back what I can to the city and to be able to help families out like I do most every day, and just giving back, if they need assistance getting into one of our cemeteries and guiding them through the process. And I guess that's about it, unless you have more questions.
That's great. Thank you very much, Chris.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's great. So I don't know if we have to spend a whole lot of time discussing. We have two wonderful candidates with really interesting and additional perspectives around. We'll probably have the most vibrant Sexton committee in the state.
Can I move to approve?
Please do. Oh.
Yes.
Hey, Chris, can you hear me? Just nod your head. Okay, so I have a question. Is your favorite cemetery in the Northeast the Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, Mass?
I have not been there yet, but that's on my list. It's definitely one I got to see, and also Arlington. I got to get down to Arlington.
Well, great. So
I would like to
Megan?
move that we appoint Chris Thrain and Maureen O'Brien to the Sextons Committee.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that was a 5-0 vote. Thank you both very, very much for
Thank you.
being willing to give some precious time to this community. Thank you. Okay, moving on to,
So
oh,
I might suggest, I'm very sorry about this, the presenter for item number 8 is on GoToMeeting, so that's going to be challenging in this current setup.
okay.
Paul was just here,
He was, yeah.
so we could skip to that item if he comes back.
Okay.
Justin-
Justin is joining by,
He will also be remote.
and that's item 11.
Paul is back.
Here's Paul.
Oh, good.
How would you feel about skipping to the official map while we try and figure out this GoToMeeting?
Well, Matt, we may get out early because we can't hear half of it.
Have to run this outside.
Oh.
Be right back.
Okay.
We'll try
it. Yeah. The alternative being, I don't know. Ooh.
Paul, are you going to share your screen?
Oh, no. Well, you can look at mine.
No, I have it here. I
Okay.
just wanted to go to the, I wanted to see the.
You're not on Wi-Fi. Do you want to get onto Wi-Fi?
Oh, is that why this isn't coming up? No. There we go. The first page.
Oh,
Justin's
Justin is
here, too.
here.
Oh, great.
Fantastic.
Okay, just one moment. I'm getting Jessica on the phone. And then we'll be ready.
This is the story of our lives over the past, I don't know how long it's been. It's been
Hi, Jessica.
becoming
You are
permanent,
on
I
with the City
think.
Council. Hello. Let's see if folks can hear you. Can you say hello again?
Sure, this is Jessica Luiso from the Planning Commission.
Great. All right. So, Jessica, I'm here in person, and we're here to introduce the official map amendments. Would you like to give a little introduction? I'm putting the map up on the screen.
Sure. So this change was brought to us multiple times by multiple residents. Essentially making a change to the Spear Street extension and how it connects over to Route 116. And it's a little hard because I can't see it, but essentially we would be maintaining connectivity by retaining a right-of-way as well as a path connection, future path connection, but removing the requirement to make that a road or vehicular connection. This is the big change there. There's also been a few updates for things that have already been built, as well as removing a connection over in Sebring where we've already put this in the comprehensive plan, but hadn't made that actual connection change on the official map yet.
So the purpose for tonight is if the council is prepared to warn a public hearing on these potential changes, the official map, just as a reminder for everybody who's watching, it plays a role in development review. And so the items that are on the official map, whether it's in this case a roadway or a recreation path or any other public facilities, need to be accommodated during a development review process. And if an applicant chooses not to, then the project is denied. The council then has a period of time to consider acquisition of the land for that facility. And so it has a process like that. So that's the role that this plays.
Okay. Are there any burning questions or that you need to hear a broader conversation about the topics for a public hearing or description? I mean, I thought the materials kind of laid it out pretty well. Tom?
So I'll ask one. So it seems to make sense, and I love that the Planning Commission was unanimous. I just remember, I want to say it was 2015, 2016, we heard from fire, police, planning, as well as DPW with topics, their perspective on the Swift Street extension. Is it safe to assume that the Planning Commission did as exhaustive of a consideration and heard from all of those different constituencies prior to their vote on the matter?
They did. They inquired with all of the entities that you spoke about, police, fire, and DPW, to get their perspectives on it. I think that as context, one important thing that was completed since that 2015 discussion was the city undertook a Tilly Drive, Kimball Avenue transportation study. So for that whole area of the city, that was presented to, I think, last summer as the final report. From a transportation perspective, just sort of large network, one of we had the consulting team look at the implications of Swift Street extension being completed as a road or not. And the most significant big picture transportation implication of it being built would be to remove future traffic load from Kennedy Drive, which is not a road that is over trafficked at this time. And so that was a lot of information for the Planning Commission to consider, that if its most significant transportation role is to remove traffic from a road that is designed for traffic, then I think it tipped the scales on the other issues that are under consideration. That said, from a planning perspective, we do try to connect neighborhoods whenever we can. This is a somewhat unique circumstance of the natural resources, but citywide on a general policy, we try to connect streets for efficiency.
Want to follow up?
Sure.
So great. I'm fine with Swift Street extension as described in the packet. This is the first time Sebring has come before me. Maybe I missed a meeting, but is it safe? Could you confirm that Sebring was unanimous in the Planning Commission? And I just don't want to act too quickly, because taking it off the map reduces our options and puts more financial burden on the city if things occur. So I'm fine with what you come forward, but can you allay any of my concerns that we might be moving too quickly on the Sebring?
Sure, you're speaking about the connection between Deerfield Avenue down to IDX Drive and Sebring?
Yep.
So that's been on the official map for a long time. It was removed as part of the 2016 comprehensive plan, as Jessica said. The city had actually received a letter, the Planning Commission from UVM, inviting that removal of that would be a good idea. Generally speaking, the city does lack some east-west connectivity. That's the reason why there have been a lot of planned roadways going east-west. Similar to the situation at Swift Street Extension, this would mean cutting up the Hort Farm, which has been very widely prioritized in the comprehensive plan and elsewhere as being an important resource in our community to retain as the Hort Farm. And so the Planning Commission back in 2016 felt that they did not want to send mixed messages about what the future of the Hort Farm should be. To say, on the one hand, we want it conserved, on the other hand, we're planning a roadway through it. No, conserved is the wrong word. To be retained as the Hort Farm. East-west transportation is always good. But in this instance, again, this is a balance of different needs in the community. And it was unanimous both times with the commission.
Yes, Matt?
Just to clarify, you said Hort Farm, not Horse Farm.
Hort.
Uh,
Horticultural.
Yes, I know. The math sometimes muffled. Good to see you, Paul. The two questions. One is regarding that connection at UVM Horticultural Farm. Is there a pedestrian path, recreation path that we, just like we should be making sure that we can connect the neighborhoods via walkers and bikers? Can we connect walkers and bikers if we give up that planned roadway? Is there anything we can retain to keep that connection for pedestrians?
There are connections that exist to the north and to the south of the horticultural farm today through Szymanski Park and through the green strip that you see that looks like sort of a little letter V to the south of it. I guess my suggestion would be that rather than looking at that through the development review lens of the official map, that as we've had a long tradition of working with UVM to consider recreation paths through their property, like through the Wheelock property and the ropes course and all that might be an avenue to consider how do we both maintain the horticultural farm for what it is and also consider and work collaboratively to invite the public to it, rather than having it be a little bit more of an adversarial tool that the official map is of when you come in to build, this is what you must do. So that might be my suggestion, but
Because you're suggesting that we have less leverage than we do over the other connection that we have, where we're actively talking about creating a 20-foot right-of-way and a pedestrian path.
right. I guess the difference being that it is anticipated that the Swift Street Extension property, the Hill Farm, will be developed at some point.
And the developer would pay for that pedestrian
Correct.
connectivity.
Whereas here, this would not be triggered on the horticultural farm until and unless it were actually built upon, which is not anybody's plan at this point.
Very good point. And then one last question, just because it's right in front of me, and I know it's not part of this, but number 7 on the map.
Yes.
So where is that officially? We're talking about the connection between Cider Mill Drive and 116, connecting, doing the east-west connection between Dorset Street
Yep.
and 116. Where is that on the official map right now?
It is a planned roadway on the official map.
Okay.
Jessica, you may want to elaborate on this, but the Planning Commission recognizes that there's still a lot of work to be done on the official map. And as part of their motion to remove the roadway across the Hill Farm, they said that they would like to separately follow up with an examination of future east-west needs, including the one that you're referring to, in acknowledgement of the one that is going to be built at Cider Mill 2. But they felt that here was an action that they could take in the short term that was widely agreed upon with the Swiss Street, and that they could study and examine the other ones as an important subject in the city, but not tie them together and have it be a project that sort of gets too big to handle in the short term.
And I know I don't need to remind you, but some people may not know that there's money set aside. The Development Review Board decided when Cider Mill 2 was developed in order to build that roadway, should a future developer decide to connect those areas.
That's correct. So each...
There was a what?
Money set aside.
Money set aside on
By
Cider Mill
the
2 as
Cider
part of a
Mill 2
condition.
developers?
Right, so
So
each
as part of the
house that's
condition
built in
imposed
Cider
upon
Mill
the
2,
developers.
I believe it's $1,000 per unit.
That's right.
Is dedicated for building the connection out between Cider Mill 1 and the Marceau Meadows property, which is the city owns the right-of-way there, but there's no roadway in there.
Right.
Yes.
So on the Hort Farm today, do the neighbors in Overlook, are they able to walk that path back towards the main buildings? Are they allowed to walk around the grounds of the
I
Hort Farm?
believe, I can confirm with UVM campus planning, but I believe that the Hort Farm is largely, if not entirely, fenced.
Fenced?
Yes.
Fenced,
correct.
okay. Because
That's my
one of the
understanding.
paths looks like it dumps out onto the corner of Overlook, but I'm not sure. But I don't know if there's a
Right, there is a path currently from just below Overlook Park that connects into Szymanski Park, and it goes right next to the Hort Farm portion, but there's a fence line there.
But if you go down into Overlook, into the curved area, there looks like the path goes through the trees and spills out onto Overlook. I'm just curious, but I think you're right, there's probably a fence. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
Can I just, clarity?
Yes.
So to Councilor Coda's question, did I hear you say correctly, Paul, that since the horticultural farm is not currently zoned for certain development, that should UVM try to do something like that, that would initiate a process where we could, as a city, have the leverage to state we want some paths or right-of-ways for pedestrian access?
That is a power of the official map. So if, let's say it was a roadway, as it currently is there, then if the horticultural farm ever came in for development, they would need to accommodate a roadway. If it was a path, then it would be the same. It would be the same subject.
Right now, we're removing that, so that path won't be there.
Correct.
So I'm completely fine on the Swift Street extension, but I feel like we are negating future options as well as not protecting the city's interests in pedestrian and connectedness by removing that Sebring pathway. And I'm interested to hear your response to possibly considering additional similar language to that area to retain the city's official map interest, which puts the financial burden on the developer, if my understanding is correctly from it. It just seems like we're giving away options that have true cost to future taxpayers. But am I wrong?
No, I mean, that's what the official map is intended to do. It's intended to assure that certain infrastructure exists at the time of development. I think in the instance of a roadway, the Planning Commission felt that it was sending mixed messages, that it was somewhat implying that the city wanted to see it built, so see development on the property. A recreation path, I don't know, Jessica, would you think that the Planning Commission might want to review Councilor Chittenden's question before the public hearing?
About retaining the path access? I just want to make sure I got the
right. So
question
replacing
right.
the planned roadway across the horticultural farm with a planned path.
Just to retain options.
Well, I think you addressed the connectivity in that area really well. Like, there are paths that essentially go all the way around it now, with the east-west connections to the south and to the north, and kind of north-south just on the east side. So, I think that was part of the discussion, that essentially you can travel by foot or bike all the way around, and by car most of the way around already. That we didn't really feel like we needed another connection right through the middle of it. And our regulations include, if it does become developed, you do need the layout would need to include those connections. So, I think we just didn't want them to feel like, while it's a farm, it needed to have this infrastructure run through it, since, there is reasonable connections all the way around it, under existing conditions.
Okay, I'm fine.
Okay. Any other questions? We have a member in the audience who wants to say something? Is that I couldn't tell who it was. You're very masked and covered up tonight.
Michael Mittag.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a comment that the Hort Farm is a working farm, and they're already quite fussy about where you may go. They don't want people trampling around on the property. When there are events there, they're very specific about where you may go, where you may park, where you may walk. So the council should bear that in mind when thinking about this. It's a working farm. They really don't want people wandering through there when there's no event organized by the Hort Farm.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right. So I would entertain a motion. Megan?
I move to warn a public hearing on proposed amendments to the official map number OM-21-02 and number 0M-21-02 for Monday, October 4th at 7:30 p.m.
Sure.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So that was unanimous. Thank you, Paul. Okay, so we will go back to item 8, project. Can we do that update? I mean,
Yep.
Bread and Butter Farms here.
So Britt's on the,
So Britt is going to be
Oh,
joining in the same way that Jessica was just joining. And he's also, I think, maybe on the video. So we're just kind of making up technology solutions on the fly here.
Duct tape and bubble gum.
Okay, well, thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica. So we will move back to item 8, which is the project update on the Auclair multi-parcel conservation initiative. And Paul, you're going to start it, or?
Yes, let me just
Brenda-
get Britt on the phone here. It's like phone a friend on that game show.
Phone a friend, yeah. Your lifeline.
Hi, Britt. This is Paul Connor. You're about to join the city council meeting.
Yep, I'm aware. Thank you.
All right. Oh, and Britt is there by video.
Yep.
All right. So you're a little bit crackly there, Britt. So we'll try to. Oh, and you need to turn off the audio on your computer entirely.
Yep.
All right. So, thank you, everybody. That's very crackly, Britt. Is there anything you can do at your end to?
Wiggle the cord.
Is that better?
Try again.
Yeah, it is better. He just needs to have his mouth closer.
Hold on. Is that better, Paul?
Yes, that is. Thank you.
Much better. Thank you.
All right. Paul Connor, Director of Planning and Zoning with the City of South Burlington. I'm here for an update about the large and significant conservation efforts on the 3 Auclair parcels. I'm joined tonight by Corey Pierce and Brandon Bless of Bread and Butter Farm, and also Britt Hazelton, who is taking over as the project lead from the Vermont Land Trust. And so they've got some excellent and exciting updates on everything that has happened in the last 8 or 10 months since you've heard from this project, as well as sort of a next steps in terms of the Natural Resource Conservation Service conservation work. So Britt, can I hand it over to you at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Feels a little odd for me, but hopefully you can hear me.
And Britt, do you want me to have you share this? Would you like to be able to show your screen, or do you want me to just bring up the files that you sent?
For now, why don't you bring up the just that context map?
Okay.
I'll be referring to that as we go through.
All right, go ahead then.
Okay, so thank you everyone for having us. Brandon Bless and Corey Pierce are there in person now. They made it down. Sorry, I can't be there as well. So I'm the Farm Project Director with the Vermont Land Trust. Sent the memo last week. Hopefully everyone got a chance to see that. One correction, I had a minor typo in there. I believe the last time this project came before the council was in December 2020, not 3 months from now in December 2021. Hopefully we won't be back in a few months. So our goal tonight is to bring the council up to speed on this project. It's a complicated, very exciting one. We want to address any lingering questions or concerns if there are any. We're not here to request additional funds. We don't have any formal action, I believe, required by the council. And we won't be back in the future for additional funding either. So I want to offer just some quick background and introduction on DLT and how we work and this project in general. And then I think Corey and Brandon may speak to the farm and their vision. But there are a lot of kind of misconceptions and confusion about how DLT works. So sometimes it's best just to do a quick overview. So we're a private nonprofit land conservation organization. We help landowners and communities conserve parcels of land primarily through the use of conservation easements. That's a legal tool that limits subdivision and development, among other restrictions. We're not trying to conserve every parcel we can. We focus on significant properties with agricultural, forest land, recreational, and natural habitat values. We currently have easements on just 3 properties in South Burlington. That includes portions of the former Leduc farm, now Bread and Butter's home farm, and Auclair Parcel A, which is on this map. I'll describe the different blobs on this map in a second. So easements are legal deeds. They're recorded in the land records. They run with the land in perpetuity. Landowners continue to own, manage, pay taxes on the land. VLT just holds an interest in the property. Sometimes landowners donate easements to VLT. Other times, such as in the case of many farmland projects, we can apply for grant funding to actually purchase the conservation easements. The most common funding source in Vermont for easements is the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, VHCB. It's an independent state board. It's funded by state dollars, and they also get federal conservation dollars through NRCS. So VHCB and NRCS are very important funders and projects for the overall Auclair project. So now just focusing in on this map, the former Auclair properties, it's essentially 3 different parcels. We have Parcel A to the east of 116, bordering the Williston boundary there. Thank you, Paul. We have Parcel B, which is across the street. It's north of Cheese Factory Road. And then there's Parcel C, which is south of Cheese Factory Road. So I'm sure all of you have driven by these 1,000 times and are very familiar with these pieces. So the background for this overall project, for those that are kind of new to it, in 2017, the former owners, family members of the Auclair Morway family, put these 3 parcels on the market. Bread and Butter Farm was able to get the land under contract and started working with VLT, VHCB, and the city on a pretty ambitious plan to conserve almost all of it. And they also partnered with Dirt Capital Partners, which is a farmland conservation investment group from upstate New York. They helped Bread and Butter finance the purchase of parcels B and C, and that purchase was completed in 2018. At the same time, VLT purchased Parcel A on that map. So a critical part of the overall funding picture for this was an initial $605,000 contribution from the city's conservation fund. That was approved by the council in 2018. I believe, and then a further $310,000 was committed by the council in 2019. And in a narrow technical sense, this incredible $915,000 contribution from the city is going towards the easement acquisition on Parcel B, but it's really just a critical instrumental piece of the overall acquisition and conservation of all 3 parcels. So where things stand today, Parcel A is continued to be owned by VLT. It was conserved last year. The easement was put into place last year with funding by the HCB. It's farmed by Bread and Butter under a lease agreement, and we've been doing some active wetland and riparian restoration, planting trees in some of the protection zones we have on that property. Parcels B and C are not yet conserved. We plan to close on those easements in January. We've been getting updated appraisals and working on configurations with all the partners. So we've been moving slowly but surely through that funding process with all the partners. The plan is for Dirt Capital Partners to convey the easements on B and C to VLT and VHCB, thereby conserving those parcels. And then they're going to immediately transfer the properties to VLT. So VLT is going to step in as an interim owner, similar to what's happening on Parcel A. And we'll continue, leasing the land to Bread and Butter. All 67 acres of Parcel C are getting conserved. we're planning to conserve 104 acres of Parcel B. You know, that 104 acres will be subject to these permanent easement restrictions. The remaining 13 acres, which is on the northern part of Parcel B along 116, there's a little call-out box to that. That's excluded from the easement restrictions. Still very much a part of the overall project. I want to be clear about that. It's going to be an important area for locating farm-related infrastructure, farm-related housing in the future that just may not be compatible with the permanent easement restrictions. VLT will be purchasing that exclusion along with the conserved pieces. Our plan is to lease the land to Bread and Butter while we work towards creating a new nonprofit entity, a land holding entity that will become the long-term owner, and that will continue leasing to Bread and Butter Farm. So that's a quick overview of the project. I think I'm going to hand it off to either Corey or Brandon to discuss just Bread and Butter and their vision for these pieces.
I have a question on what Britt just presented. Do you want it now or after Bread and Butter presents?
Is it Britt who would answer it?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you ask him while he's on the phone?
Great. Hi, Brett. So what's presented here is missing one piece that I think is important to include. You went through the history of the city disbursements. So 610,000 was dispersed, and then at the 310,000, the second disbursement from the Open Space Fund, there was a heavy discussion, and part of that motion was to preserve some city rights for possible or at least in the easement, including exceptions or carve-outs for potential play space. Not saying this time, not saying 10 years from now, saying in the future, 50 years from now, if a future generation of South Burlingtonians wanted to put a soccer field in this 13-acre quadrant, to get that $310,000 dispersed, it was pivotal for Dave Kaufman and I to support that disbursement. I remember we went back and forth. I'm not seeing that, nor did I hear it in your rundown of this. So I see the farm hub, and I'm not against that, but I'm really hopeful that to be consistent with that disbursement of that second round of money, that the easement over that 13 acres also includes carve-outs so that future generations, if farming does not thrive in this area, can purpose that space for outdoor recreation usage by the public. Is that consistent with what you've heard, or do we need to dig up the documentation from that movement, that motion?
Paul, do you want to address that? I can. I couldn't hear. I think I need to maybe mute my phone and tune into computer audio to really hear the counselors, unfortunately. I believe the question is about public recreation, maybe a town-owned piece in the vicinity of that exclusion. Is that correct?
That was the question, yes. And I can answer it in part, but if you have something that you'd like to start with, go ahead, Britt.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So again, when we do a conservation easement, that's a permanent thing that can't be undone, and places a lot of restrictions on parcels. One of those primary restrictions is subdivision. So once we put an easement on something, it's tied together forever and can't be broken up. So one of the nice things about our approach here is that we are leaving options for potential city involvement and farm-related involvement on that exclusion open. So there will be options for that. I believe this was before my involvement in the project. There was a planning process that the city was involved with and that determined that it wasn't feasible for a town-owned portion of that property at this time. But I think that's what Paul might be able to speak to better.
Right. So let me back up for 1 second, and then I'll answer your question, Councilor Chittenden. I think one thing that Britt noted here, but I think is a critical change in the last year or so in the process, was, as Britt mentioned, the folks at Dirt Capital were the interim owners. And when they were the interim owners, the objective was, of course, they were there as a bridge loan, essentially. The working effort was, how do we use the city's money and the NRCS money to conserve that 104 plus or minus acres. And then the second piece of the puzzle was, how does Dirt Capital remove themselves for the remaining 13 acres? As part of that, we did do an analysis as requested by council to see what would it take for us, what would the cost be to the city, and what could we obtain for 3 acres of land. And I think we talked with council about it in the winter, but I don't recall honestly whether it was an executive session or a public session. I'd have to go in my notes and see. But and I'm happy to go into my notes and see what was executive and public on it. For the moment of right now, I think the key thing that Britt is noting is that the way that Dirt Capital is being extricated from this is Vermont Land Trust is acquiring the 13 acres without any restrictions on it, meaning that all of the possibilities remain on the table for the foreseeable future. Farm housing, possibly recreation, possibly additional conservation. So nothing is lost in this interim. There's now a nonprofit dedicated to the long-term interests of the property who will be the owner of it.
Follow up?
Sure, and then I'd like to.
Sure.
Hear
So that's a very important point for me, because I really hope, Britt, in future documentation and presentation, that the city's interests on these 13 acres, so that any easements that are conveyed by VLT make clear that it could still be used for public recreation space. Because of the severity and perpetuity, or the perpetual nature of these easements, I only approve that $310,000 additional monies for this because the motion included a protection of the city's interests in this land possibly be using for future public needs. So that's an important piece that I'm really going to look for, because otherwise the city contributed $915,000 for a couple of paths. And I want to see that some city interest for possible easements or use for this land is protected in the language that's going to be coming forward. But I'm just one lonely little counselor.
Yes, Tim.
I appreciate that. Hopefully people can hear. I mean, I would, of course, argue that the city's contribution is doing a lot more than providing some paths in terms of the long-term protection of these parcels and promoting the viability of farm-related businesses. But, you know, absolutely VLT in our interim role as owner of this piece, and in our kind of long-term role as a member of the entity that will be the long-term owner here, we're absolutely committed to, you know, working with the city, working with Bread and Butter to figure out the future of that portion of the property. And, you know, I'll be frank, it's a little bit uncertain in terms of what the level of farm-related infrastructure will be there. You know, the number of units, I don't think it's going to be a large number of units related to housing. But for us, VLT is committed to working with the city to, you know, achieve whatever outcomes the city is looking to achieve there.
Okay, thank you. Tim?
I have a question, Britt. So in the original $606,000, you know, and with the work that Dirt Capital did, one of the caveats was that there would be a number of lots that would be able to be sold at market rate for development. Is that all in the 13 acres part of the farm hub?
I'm concerned if it is.
No, I'm just trying to figure out, because Dirt Capital was looking to make a good.
To be sold for development.
Can you hear me, Britt? Oops, you muted him.
Sorry, I have to toggle back and forth between muting my computer and the phone, so it's a little difficult.
Hey, Britt, I think we've got.
Can you relay that question?
Yes, Britt, I think we have the technology solved in the meeting here, so I'm going to hang up this phone call, and you should be able to participate as you normally would on a Zoom call, okay?
We hope.
Well, we'll find out. Either that or he just managed to avoid your question.
No, Britt, can we hear you?
Can you?
Yeah. Loud and clear.
Victory.
You have a much lower voice than on the phone.
Oh, okay. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'll take it.
Good.
So it was my understanding that in the first $606,000 that the city committed to this, that Dirt Capital was going to try to make a small return on their investment by keeping the options open for a few parcels to be sold at market rate for development. And I just want to know where is that?
That's not part of this scenario. So again, Dirt Capital is exiting this project in January. Is what we're planning on when VLT acquires all of Dirt's remaining holdings here. There's nothing that they're retaining to sell. We're not planning to sell lots. It's all going to be owned by VLT, leased to Bread and Butter, and eventually part of this nonprofit entity. And there's no plan to do, for-profit sales of lots here.
So Councilor Barrett, the hope and aspiration was that there would not be a need to do those 4 or 5 lots, and instead to be able to, if possible, find some way towards affordability and especially farm housing affordability. And that's been a big chunk of what Corey and Brandon and Britt have been working on, is to have the excluded area, those 13 acres, serve the farm purposes, serve as Councilor Chittenden was speaking about, possibly, if we can figure it out, recreational areas and the farm housing portion of it, instead of just selling off lots to make up a financial gap.
So is the farm hub then exempt from any for-profit sales of property or housing at all?
No, but it'll be under the VLT and then that nonprofit entity's ownership. So there may be lots conveyed out of there, but the objective of that will be, to convey them to farm workers, people associated with the farm. And we're actively working with Bread and Butter and other partners to figure out how that'll work and how to develop housing there for farm workers that's affordable. And that's a very challenging undertaking. We're working on that. And the beauty of this scenario is that we have more options available to us in terms of pursuing different types of, affordable, I'm going to use that in quotes, it's a hard thing to define, housing there related to the farm. Then if we were to conserve the whole thing, we wouldn't be able to pursue some of those housing models. So we also wouldn't be able to separate off a piece for the city in the future.
So it's possible that there could be a small co-housing development there that would support the farm and maybe some other non-farm individuals that would be renting or something like that?
That is possible. And I think, that's where Corey and Brandon, we're going to kind of step in to speak to, I think, their vision for the property, including this exclusion. So
maybe we could have Corey and Brendan share that. Is your question on this housing?
No, it's about Parcel A.
Okay. Why don't you ask that?
I don't know if
it's
this is
not
a Brett
really
or Paul question, but who's responsible for the for designing and for paying for the future public trails on Parcel A? Is that VLT or is that city?
The design of them, we have been working collaboratively between our Rec and Parks Department and the folks at Bread and Butter. We have had some conceptual discussions about how they would be created and maintained, but at this point, the focus has been on. I think you're getting an echo there. At this point, the focus has been on the where, because from a farming perspective, identifying what is to be part of the farm and what could be a future trail has been the key piece. The how and is been a piece to be determined as we go forward. But there's a shared commitment to doing it.
So, Corey, why don't you share what you have been working on, please? Yeah, the green light should be on. If it's not, push.
The button that says push.
Yeah, push
Okay.
the push button.
Yeah, so we could certainly get into some of these nitty-gritty questions. I would love to just take a quick step back, and this is a project that, as you heard, started in 2017. So it's a long-term project. Some of you were there in 2017, some of you weren't. So it's I'd say from the time that I got to the Leduc Farm, Bread and Butter Farm, which was 12 years ago now, we saw that land, the Auclair farm, kind of dwindling out of out of being a working farm, and always daydreamed like, how do we, like, could we see this be conserved? Could we see this continue to stay in agriculture and serve this city? And we never thought it was possible. It's challenging enough to make our 143 acres at the home farm viable for so many reasons. But we were working hard to do that and to build a true community farm. Any of you who've been to a Bread and Butter Farm, I think, understand how absolutely committed we are to bringing the public to our farm and engaging with people of all ages and all backgrounds in every way we possibly can. And in 2017, when we saw it go up for sale, and we, just thought, gosh, is this even possible to consider how we would do this? And we came to the council and presented our vision at, I think it was close to midnight one night. And you all very quickly approved that first $605,000. It was just like a incredible catalyst for this huge and unprecedented project to take flight. And I think, and Britt can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but it's at least one of, if not the largest, farmland agricultural conservation project in the state of Vermont to date. And super complex. One of our biggest challenges as a business, and I'd say a constellation of business, and the vision is to have not just Bread and Butter Farm, but multiple businesses like we currently do, but even more in the future, providing jobs and a resource to the South Burlington community. Our biggest challenge is housing, and housing the staff as we've grown from just 2 of us working on the farm full time to now over 40 employees a year in some capacity, some full time and all the way down to some part time and of all ages. So providing jobs for teenagers that are really meaningful, and all the adults and families. We currently have 5 families who are committed to being here, and none of which have permanent secure housing, including myself. So anyway, the main point I'd like to share is like expressing incredible gratitude to the city council for being open to this unprecedented project, and to say now 5 years in, or 4 whatever years in, how exciting it is that what we set out to do that many years ago is really here. We have a long way to go. But I'd say the really challenging parts are there. And it feels like we can see the finish line now. And all the updates that we've given in the last few years, there were still so many unknowns and so many challenges. And to know that Dirt Capital is going to be out of this project within, less than 6 months is incredible. To know that VLT is coming on in the way they are and have been this whole time, but the role that they're going to be playing at that point is incredible. And to know that if we look at that map and see that little corner that will be Cider Mill 2, and that's nestled right up against where that area is going to be that we're talking about, and know that that is literally, I think of that like currently the home farm of Bread and Butter is somewhat landlocked or somewhat isolated because of Cheese Factory Road not having any walking paths and no access to all of the city's trails. To know that that corner is literally what's going to unlock access. And I will say, a few trails from what I've heard, is over 17 miles of trails. That is an incredible resource, and we are super open to all the ways in which we can engage the city. That is like squarely in our passion to educate folks on how to regenerate soil and take care of waterways and quality air and nutritious and healthy food, and engage people. So I'm super thrilled about it, and we are super grateful and thankful for that. I think that's where I'll leave it.
Sure. I would just like to comment, just as sort of a little background, just to reinforce our understanding of the role that Dirt Capital played And they really allowed us the time to figure this out, to look for other partners, additional money to make this dream come true. So while they did always talk about if we can't find someone to take this over, you know, we're not in this to just lose money, that we might have to sell lots at market rate. But that is not their mission. Their mission is to help give time to sort of creative plans like this to get people lined up, because it's really complex and there still are, you know, lots of issues to be resolved. But having them sort of bought out is a huge one. So now it's a question of, you know, what does that 13 acres look like? How does Bread and Butter expand their operation, bring in other partners to make it all a viable agricultural business? And also, I think, interestingly, figure out where these 17 miles of trails, that I think is significant in terms of a payback to this community for the money that we've invested in this. I think the recent weather events, to me, make it even more clear that we can't just rely on the Midwest and California for all of the food that we have grown accustomed to. And so entities like this are really critical for our community in Vermont. It's not just well, that's a nice thing. That would be cute to be able to go to a farm and see how chickens make eggs and, you know, how cows make milk and, you know, how you can make land more productive. But to me, it's really crucial to the sustainability of our community, our state, and our country. Tom.
So I just want to say from the outset, Bread and Butter, you are an excellent partner. I just love having you in the community. I know the entire community loves Bread and Butter Farms, Burger Nights, and everything else. My line of questioning from the first time we considered this in 2016 and the second time and tonight is always about protecting the city's interests. So that's where my vantage point on this seat is. So I remember the 2016 vote. It wasn't all of us. It was a split vote. And then the second disbursement, there again was a split vote. And that second disbursement, I only conditionally voted for it, and the conversation was just to protect that city interest. So if this council wants a unanimous vote for supporting whatever this is going to look like in January, I just really want to look Paul in the eye and have him confirm to me after I read the documents that there are protections in these easements that will allow for future generations, if it's VLT that owns that 13 acres or whoever else, that paths, recreation paths, maybe even paved, could be put there, should that be necessary, or at least a soccer field on those 13 acres. That was the condition on the Dave Kaufman and I voting yes on that second disbursement, that we wanted to protect the city's possible future uses for that land. Not that the city would own it fee simple. I heard the complexities there. What the discussion was to include in any conservation easements the ability for that space to be used, converted, somehow available to the public for recreational purposes. So that's what I'm going to be looking for in January. If the council wants a unanimous vote on this, that's what I'm going to really need to see. And I'm not seeing it in the presentation or the documentation tonight. Because as great as Bread and Butter Farms is, just like the Leduc farm, we don't know how long you're going to be there. You could be there 20 years, 40 years, 100 years, or not. And so what I'm looking to do is just protect the city's interests in these easements, these very serious easements that are going to come into place, permanently restricting what can be done on that land, to have us get something for the $915,000 we dispersed. That's all where I'm coming from.
My understanding is that that land will always be working farmland. That was the agreement, and it's into perpetuity. So I just wanted to clarify that with you, Tom. I don't think...
The 13 acres, there was a condition on
Yes.
the disbursement. So I'm not
Yes.
seeing that condition being honored in the discussion tonight, or at least what has been presented. Honored's the wrong word. I don't see it reflected in the materials or in the presentation.
Okay. think you've addressed it, and Paul's responded. Can we learn more about the plans? I mean, I think, did Brandon have something to say?
Thank you. That the federal conservation easement through the NRCS would apply to the 104 acres. The 13 acres, instead of it being in the hands of Dirt Capital, will now be in the hands of Vermont Land Trust to work with the partners to figure out the best purpose for it. Up until this point, with Dirt Capital as an excellent bridge loan partner, they were also very much interested in eventually getting out from under that. And so that was an area of uncertainty for all of us. Vermont Land Trust, they are a longer term player in all of this. And so I think Britt and the folks at Bread and Butter Farm would really like to, circle up and consider what councilors were expressing this evening on that 13 acres. But the key here is that the 104 would be locked up and conserved, along with the overwhelming majority of Parcel A and C, which is a tremendous win for the community.
Matt,
Quick
there's a
question
question.
for Paul. Thank you, Chairman. The 13 acres, I don't have my multicolored zoning map. Is that R4?
It is all in the southeast quadrant neighborhood residential, which is essentially an R4, yes.
Right. So, I mean, can you put 52 units on that?
By regulation, yes, but that's not been anybody's
That's a lot of
vision
septic
here. And
systems,
there's
isn't it?
there's other complexities in terms of water and sewer. So mathematically, yes, but in practice, I don't think that's been anywhere near what anybody's been exploring or looking at for both philosophical reasons and infrastructure issues.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and maybe I can just say that, VLT would not, if that was the destiny or the vision for the 13 acres, we would not be stepping in to an interim owner and position there, and then that future role as being part of the nonprofit entity that will be the long-term owner. If it was going to be a larger scale development like that, we wouldn't be entering the chain of title. We are doing this to help our excellent partner, Dirt Capital exit. They've been absolutely crucial. I appreciate the comments and support of them, because none of this would have happened without them. But basically, this will give us flexibility in terms of thinking about the farm-related development, the infrastructure, and the city's interests there. And we are, again, committed to being a partner for that. And we, VLT can be held accountable for sure in terms of what happens there. But, from what I've heard from Brandon and Corey over the last number of months is, in any kind of immediate time frame, maybe 3 to 9 houses max. We also have house rights and locations on other parcels, and then some types of farm-related infrastructure buildings, but not a larger scale residential development.
Okay, last question or thought?
Yeah, I wanted to know more about the plans to have this housing be affordable. I do recall the 9 homes being the number. And you had said that there are various scenarios for arriving at affordability for them. Is that appropriate for us to hear something about that tonight, or is that still not ready for prime time here?
Yeah, I think this is Brandon. I would say not ready in terms of not fully fleshed out, because some of that has to do with the commons. So the Vermont Agrarian Commons taking ownership of all of the lands is going to be a key component in creating affordability at the base layer. We, on Parcel C, we have 3 house sites. On Parcel A, which is 192 acres, we have 1 house site. We developed those both as a new housing model we call it a condo housing easement, but basically we're allowed to own the house right under effectively a ground lease without owning any of the land. So we created a blanket 192 acre conservation easement on Parcel A, and we have one condo easement house right sort of floating as a layer above that. By doing that, we were actually able to bring the market value down from, at the time of the appraisal, was like $120,000 down to $30,000 just to buy the site. And so that alone was a huge chunk. And then now we're looking at actually innovating new septic systems and design that would bring that from $40,000 down to $10,000. So we've been working really hard on being very conscious, effective, and thoughtful about the actual execution of the project, while simultaneously we've done a affordability study with CHT, Champlain Housing Trust, to look at how do we create affordability covenants on the land that would actually be able to bring in either additional grant funds to buy down original purchase value, and or looking at established infrastructure like in Cider Mill 2's case. A lot of the question for the 13-acre affordability, as you can tell, I just highlighted kind of Parcel A and C. A lot of the questions for the 13-acre affordability has to do with Cider Mill 2 infrastructure, when it comes in and what it may or may not be able to support on the 13 acres. Because if we can't access town services, affordability becomes a lot more. I just told you $40,000 for a septic system. It does not cost that much to attach to city, town, or town services. So, and a well site, et cetera. It really adds up, and it's really that CHT looked at this and said, "Come back to us when you have town services," because they said, under our framework of what we define as affordability and how we work with numbers, you can't do it on a private system. Which I get. And so we've been listening to that and waiting for that. Simultaneously, we're developing and innovating in ways that we think is also best for us. Other things that we're looking at are multi-units to share costs that way. And then also different partners on the building side to bring in some cost sharing on financing, and then bring in some cost sharing to really do really smaller scale is what we're looking at development. So like a house at, maybe 1,000 square feet, and calling that good for a family of 4, and looking at other ways to do it that way. And that's all kind of really exciting to us. Like we're actively working on it right now and making it happen. So we don't feel daunted by it as much as we just know it's going to take time, and there's still some sort of pieces and players that we need on board to make all that happen.
Yeah. So just a follow-up question. So you would lease the land from the Vermont, from the VLT, and there would be home ownership on
home
leased
ownership.
land?
Yep. Yep. So in those condo housing easements, that's how it's structured. Versus a traditional FLH or farm labor house site, actually you have to own, that's what Corey has on the Shelburne property, on the Leduc farm, and you have to own the entirety of the parcel in order to build that house site. But everything is conserved and subject to something called an option to purchase at ag value, which reduces the value of that house site immediately. So you build, say, a $400,000 home, it's immediately appraised the day it's built at $200,000 because it's subject to OPAV, which means you can't get financing. So you could figure out how to build an affordable home, but you can't get financing to build an affordable home. The condo housing easement is designed to sort of break that thing apart. The 13 acres presents much more traditional financing options. That would be different than all the other things we've discussed. That would really make it so that we could look at maybe partnering with CHT or some of the banks they partner with to do affordable housing.
Thank you, Brandon.
But there's still a lot to
that.
figure out there.
Thanks.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
A quick comment, because they don't have the specifics.
No,
I'm
just a comment. I'm just
Okay.
in support, right? Because I supported the initial outlayment of the $606,000 for this project in partnership with Dirt Capital and Bread and Butter Farm, because it was a long-term investment in the whole Shelburne Pond greater area puzzle piece of lands that need to be preserved in either working farm or in natural condition, right? In a wild condition, which is what we've been talking about here for a few months related to climate change, right? So I think this is an excellent transition that's going to occur with VLT, and I look forward to seeing future plans. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Obviously, you have 2 full-time jobs. One running the farm, and then the other is how in the world do you figure this out? But at least you have some really good partners, and Brett and other people to help try to answer or address all those issues. So thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, Paul, because
Thank
you
you for your
helped
time.
keep them on track as well.
Sandy.
Thank you.
Did she say she wanted to speak?
Turn on her camera.
Sandy, do you need to make a comment or wish to? Or not? Maybe not. Because we're running a little behind schedule. All right. Well, there'll be plenty of time to talk about the affordable housing because it hasn't been designed yet. So why don't we move on then? Thank you all. To item 10, receive an update from Public Works on the city's emerald ash borer plans and provide direction to staff. So Justin, before you commence, I just want to thank you for, I don't know how many years of service, a lot. How many?
12.
12 years. That's all through high school. That's your, undergraduate. So we appreciate all that you've done. We certainly.
And thank you very much.
I'm very happy that you are going to provide the same kind of transition for a new leadership, because I think I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So, all right. So, emerald ash borer.
Yeah, good evening. Someone will tell me if I need to move the mic. I'll just trust in the process.
You need to move the mic.
As I said. Good evening, Justin Rabideau, Director of Public Works. At a recent council meeting, it may have been the last one or two meetings ago, the issue of the city's emerald ash borer management plan was raised, and staff was asked to return this evening to do, and at least in my mind, two, perhaps three things. One is to update you on what we've done and what we plan on doing. Two, we were asked to investigate specifically what is occurring in the city of Montpelier. And three, there was a discussion of perhaps access of other groups to city lands and to have a voice in this. I'll speak to the first two, and the city manager will address the third comment. I don't want to reiterate a lot that's in the cover memo other than to say we've removed 100 plus of our almost 800 ash trees in South Burlington. We've also replaced almost the same amount. So as you recall, our pledge is to, in normal times, be able to remove an ash tree, grind its stump, and replant in a similar location, all within a year's time frame. And that's how the budget is put together and has been presented and approved by council for 3 budget cycles now. This project was one of the, quote, discretionary general fund projects that was, its expenses were halted during COVID. So we're a little behind where we would have planned, but the good news is we had initially budgeted about $1,500 a tree. And for this entire effort, for a total of about $1.2 million, and we've been spending somewhere between $900 and $1,000. So, and we've also been able to do some of this work with our own crews. For example, in the village at Dorset Park, we did our team did the majority at no out of pocket cost of the tree removal within that specific location. So, so that's what we've been doing, and why we want to keep doing it is, well, quite simply, 20 years ago, this was a thing in one county in the country. It has slowly spread and eventually made its way to Vermont, where 3 years ago, it was in one little pocket of Vermont. There's all sorts of great interactive time-elapse maps I could have provided you links to, but it's pretty much, we believe it's pretty much established fact that this beetle is spreading. The state of Vermont, one of their actual slogans is not stop the spread. It's slow the spread, because they understand that there is no stopping the spread. The heat map now has a kind of a magenta-y orange, but not quite yet the bright red circle within Chittenden County, and this is from the Vermont Invasives website. So the beetle's here. It is going to attack, damage, kill our trees. Once a tree is infected, within 3 to 5 years, it is for all practical purposes dead. So that's why we have been doing what we're doing. To the question of what is Montpelier doing, I'm proud to report, and I provide you with the highlighted sections from their management plan. They're doing the same thing we are. And I confirmed that over phone today with their director of parks and tree warden. They have a couple of minor exceptions. They have some trees within the downtown center, some ash trees that have some significance in terms of just their size and presentation and the overall feel they lend. So they're going to try to treat those 15 trees with some chemicals in hopes that over a 10-year period, which is their management plan, that those trees remain healthy and remain bountiful. Their management plan also includes a condition in case that doesn't happen, because there's not certainty with this treatment. They also, like we do, own hundreds of acres of forested lands, as well as hundreds of acres of recreation and park fields. Just like us, we're not going into red rocks or underwood or any of these areas and mitigating any ash trees or any other tree, frankly, in those forested lands. So our plan and Montpelier's are very similar. If we have 600 and something left, if we tried to preserve our trees through this chemical treatment, we'd be spending roughly $50,000 a year in perpetuity. You have to treat them probably every other year if you're lucky, if not every year. So 50 rises, but either way, 50,000 is a pretty big number when it never ends. There's also a question in talking with the city arborists of who's going to do this work. You know, this is kind of new, and we're a little unsure of. It's one thing to find someone to treat 15 trees, but to treat 300 and something trees. So we're even a little unsure if the labor market is out there to do it. So based on all the information we have previously come to believe to be facts, and a little bit more of digging around and talking to Montpelier and presenting to you what in fact they actually are doing, staff recommends that we continue the course and resume this year's CIP project, and staff would also in the FY23 budget. Man, it bites you early, these budget years. I just had to create a new folder in my Outlook email for FY23 budget. And we'll bring forward another project, assuming that an affirmative vote this evening, for the continuation of this effort in FY23. And it will probably take us a handful of years to rid the city and also replant. You know, this isn't a deforestation. It's unfortunate. And for full disclosure, in my front yard in the community I live in, my tree has been replanted. So I have a new tree in front of my front door, and the one right next to it has a flag around it, meaning it's coming down this fall. So I know what this is firsthand. It's happening literally on my own front door. So that's what staff has to offer tonight. Thank you.
If I could just add a few sentences about Chief Stevens' comment the other night, you know, and to restate a few things that Justin has said, you know, our focus really, as is Montpelier's, is on those street trees and limiting liability as trees get sick and ensuring that we're ahead of the replanting schedule. We are not touching trees, as Justin said, in our conserved areas in our parks. And what I heard Chief Stevens say was his priority was really figuring out how we most equitably provide access to the original inhabitants of our community to those resources. So as we talked about at the last meeting with the Wheeler easement and thinking about how we build that access into that easement over the time, we intend to do that with other parcels as well with our indigenous nations, and hope that that meets that goal that he articulated at your joint meeting.
Okay. Comments or questions?
Go ahead.
Matt?
Do we have any bait trees like they do in Montpelier?
Excuse me?
Bait trees. I was reading the Montpelier documents, and they have bait trees in order to attract the emerald ash borer.
So we do not. There is in China. They have developed for forested areas. They have engineered a bee or a hornet. Thank you, bee, hornet, wasp. That can be released in certain areas to help actually get at the larvae that infect the trees. That type of treatment is generally used in forest, just given the density of it. From everything we've researched, that's not an applicable treatment for a street tree.
Great. In the wood in Montpelier, they're chopping it up and giving it to low-income Montpelier residents for
They're making it available. We often, when we're conducting this or other exercises, we often get phone, or Green Mountain Power, because they do a lot of kind of trimming, and we get the calls because people just assume it's us. We do get a lot of calls from people that are driving by, or there are some kind of habitual folks that call every year. And what we do is, if someone calls and asks us for it, we'll either set it aside, we'll bring it back to the shop. Our normal course of action is just to chip things and reuse those wood chips in the city's land system elsewhere. But in the event that someone does ask, the wood cannot be shipped out of county. So it has to be, again, in terms of slowing the spread, has to be used for firewood within the county which it was harvested, but we would certainly welcome that opportunity.
Great, thank you.
Okay, other questions or comments?
You just.
Tim and then Megan.
So, do we have any evidence that the borer is in any of the trees that have been cut down yet?
No.
So why don't we just wait on cutting the trees, keep planting trees, and then cut the trees when we feel like they've become infected to some degree, and it's I mean, even if they're not dead, then it's probably ready to start taking them down. I mean, while the tree is still healthy, why would we want to cut it down now? When we could replant, we could start planting extra trees now and just take the trees down later when it appears that they're starting to defoliate. That's my question. I mean,
Again, it's quick once they're infected, and they become more expensive because they're less stable. They're less solid of a tree once they're infected. And if we had any sense that that it was not going to happen, we certainly would not be proposing a public expenditure of high 6 or low 7 figures. This is how the industry is responding to this disease. So we're not behind the 8 ball like we were with the elms. And sure, if the pleasure of the community is to wait and have our team spend our time driving around and looking at trees, and that would not certainly be my recommendation. It's going to be more expensive tomorrow than it is today. So these expenses are certainties. You are not going to not have to spend this money. So I would say the present value of the dollar is cheaper, and the liability is much less if we're proactive, like government is being to this issue. This isn't South Burlington's unique response to this problem. These are best management practices that have been established by the state and have been duplicated elsewhere throughout the country. So our recommendation is based in that, as well as our profound belief that, we could wait 2 or 3 years and then we can find one and then we can just start it all up again, and we'll just pay more then because it's going to cost more like everything else. So whatever the pleasure of the council is.
Megan.
Yeah, I was struck by the comment of Chief Stevens too, that this is a sacred tree for them. And I would like to explore if it's, something that would be of interest to our community to choose either 15 trees, let's just say a grove that we would protect and, to the end of the lifespan of those trees, or if there would be a way to preserve seeds or something in honor of that. If it's $1,000 per year for 15 trees, and we're spending 6 figures to 7 figures to take down trees and replant.
I guess if the pleasure of the community is to try to preserve a dozen trees, we have 600 and something remaining. I'm sure we can find a nominal number that could suit this public education purpose.
Would that be along the street, you think? Or
I don't know where they're.
They're all street trees.
They are located.
They're all
in
street
some
trees.
neighborhoods.
I mean, they're all street trees, and I'm sure you might have some in your backyards, and we could send our team into some of our conserved lands that we own and try to identify them if we're talking about the true definition of the word grove.
Yeah.
But again,
because that was a discussion too that was had, is using these lands, opening them up for the natives to be able to go in and do what they normally do, and it could be a religious ceremony, it could be some kind of ceremonial, and if there is a site let's just say in Wheeler or in the woods behind the Hubbard natural area or in Red Rocks. I mean, I don't know. Is that something that?
think
Well,
if
we're
it-
not
it-
touching those trees. We're only talking about street trees, right?
But would
Correct.
it be of interest for us to preserve those trees?
We're, I think we are.
Well, but unless they get the
Right, we're not
EAB,
giving them
and then they're not protected, right? So it's finding a location where those trees would be meaningful. Would it?
So I think if I can,
Yes.
I think if that's the request of the council, then let's give staff time to work with Chief Stevens and
Mhm.
put together an additional funding request for FY23 that enables us to protect that sacred to our indigenous populations
Mhm.
resource, which is separate from our Emerald Ash Borer maintenance plan. In
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah, and Chief Menard too. I believe that his his group is specifically their area of habitation was South Burlington, so he might also be someone to contact, and just something to consider.
Sure, Tom.
So I'm persuaded by your liability argument and the statement that 99% of the ash trees are predicted to be dead in the next 8 to 10 years. Could it be said that, as to Councilor Barrett's point, that part of your targeting and identification process looks at the location of the tree and doing the ones that might pose more of a threat to neighboring private property, residences, or public property, and so on? So in a way, you are targeting trees that have more exposure or potential cost for the city in your phased process over the next 8 to 10 years that is also spreading out the cost of taking these trees down, since I'm assuming your point, which I think you made, is that if they all get the emerald ash borer in the same year, it's going to be impossible to find the labor to drop them all before they start causing more issues. I'm sorry for the convoluted question,
So,
but
yeah, the way we approach it today is not based on tree health, because right now we're relatively sure they have roughly equivalent health. What we are doing is we are doing a few from this location and a few from that location. We're not showing up in Dorset Farms and taking and deforesting the entire neighborhood. And credit to our arborist and his team, they're being very thoughtful of 15 trees in this neighborhood, 15 trees in that neighborhood. So it's a little more gradual, and hopefully over time, again, this is could be a 8-year effort. Over time, the new trees we're putting in can, and I understand a 2-inch caliper tree is not a 12-inch tree, but over time, as we eventually finish in each neighborhood, there'll be enough diversity in both species and size that when the final ash tree is removed, it won't be as stark as they're all. So that's how we're doing it. We're systematically trying to diversify species and locations throughout the city so as not to overly overburden the first place we show up to and take all the trees down.
Okay, any other comments by the council?
No, but we, just a point of clarification, we voted last time we were together to pause. You're looking for a motion or discussion about whether or not to continue, I assume, here.
Yes, I think so.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
We have a comment from the audience. So, Roseanne? And is there anyone on at home on TV who wants to speak? No one's indicated yet. Okay.
My name is Roseanne Greck. I'm a resident of South Burlington. I'm the one that brought this to you.
Mhm.
And I spoke with John Kolosik today, who is one of the 3 authors of the Montpelier plan. And what he told me, and I read the Montpelier plan, which is in your packet, is not what we are doing. And I won't go into all the details, but this is the fundamental difference between what Montpelier is doing and what South Burlington is doing. And by the way, many municipalities are changing their approach to something sort of what Tim said. They are not cutting down healthy trees. What Montpelier is doing is they are treating the trees in order to buy time for a number of reasons. Buying time, they're planting right now 2 for 1 for every ash tree that they anticipate they may have to take down in the future. But it will give them more time if they have to take the ash tree down. What they're finding though now is that not all ash trees are dying. What Chief Stevens said to us is don't do the job of the emerald ash borer by cutting down the trees. That's what he said. You're doing the job of the emerald ash borer by cutting down the ash trees. Other municipalities, and John was telling me other municipalities in Vermont are also reassessing the preemptive cutting down all the healthy trees. There are now biological ways that they are researching getting predators to attack the emerald ash borer. The one that Justin was mentioning, it's called a parasitic wasp, and there are also woodpeckers. So what Montpelier is hoping is that in the time they are using to treat the trees, there may be a biological or another solution that comes along the way that will allow them not to cut everything down. The other thing they're doing is trapping, what Matt was sort of saying. They're having bait trees, and they have sticky things on the trees to attract the borers to a grove of trees. And they're trying this in other parts of the country. And so the emerald ash borer goes to those and bypasses the other trees. So they're using the least healthy trees as trap trees to save the more healthy trees. The other thing that he told me, which I had never thought about, he said, when they looked at the number of trees in Montpelier, it's like 450 ash trees. And then they looked at the number of ash trees that are on private property. It was 10 times the amount that were in the city. And they're also not doing their forests or their conserved areas. They're just looking at the street trees like we are. If they take down all of the street trees, then the emerald ash borer will go to private properties, trees. And then the taxpayer will have to fund it out of their own pocket if their trees get infected to take their ash trees down. So what Montpelier said is the taxpayer is going to pay twice. The taxpayer is going to pay the city to take down the city trees, and then the borer, without a doubt, is going to go to the other trees because all the street trees, the city trees are gone. So the individual is going to absorb even more costs when it goes to their trees. So they're talking about establishing a fund, perhaps, to help individuals who have ash trees on their private land. I'm just telling you, read the Montpelier report. You'll see that they are treating their trees now as a preemptive method to buy time so they don't cut down healthy trees. They're also finding that some ash trees are surviving. But if you cut down all your ash trees, then you're never going to know what ash trees could have made it, because there's a belief that the healthier, you don't want to cut down the female trees. I didn't realize there were male and female trees. But there are some trees that are very robust and healthy. Those are the ones you don't want to cut down. So use your trap trees to get the least healthy trees. I'm just saying, if you look at the Montpelier report that's in your packet, you'll see that this is what they're doing. And that's what John told me. He told me a whole bunch of other stuff. But preemptively cutting all the trees down is you're going to lose all the trees. This way, you're guaranteed you're going to lose all your trees because you're cutting them all down. If you don't cut them all down, you might not lose all your trees. So I know it's long-winded, but there's a lot in that report. And my conversation with John today provided a lot more detail. And they're not doing what we're doing in Montpelier.
Okay, Justin.
They're treating 15 trees. They're not treating any number greater than 15, which is exactly what I told you they were doing. They're trying to trap in forest, which we have said we have no forest management plan yet. On the street trees, make no mistake, they're doing the same thing we are. In fact, they're ahead of us because Green Mountain Power has been a partner with them in some of their utility right-of-ways. So Ms. Greco's correct. They're treating trees. They're treating 15. It's in the plan. It's what I told you. It's what the Parks Director told me today. So don't conflate they're treating trees with they're treating 450. They're treating the 15. They've told you they're treating. They're treating the 15. I've told you they're treating. So I've given you all the facts tonight, and I've given you them 100% accurate.
I'm persuaded by staff's recommendation, so I'm ready to continue with the very responsible plan, and I appreciate you giving this presentation, but that's where I am on this.
Same here. Let's not forget, we are replacing trees. If the emerald ash borer comes and wipes out not only our street trees, but our trees in our nature areas, we may not have the money to replace them. We're thoughtfully planning out in a strategic way, let's continue that work. I would make a motion that we continue the remediation program.
If that's satisfactory to the city manager, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion that's been made and seconded. Further conversation?
I would just
Megan.
like us to think about finding the appropriate area of trees that we could sensitively, and proactively protect out of respect for the native people who value those trees.
Okay.
I-
Tim?
I understand all of the arguments here. I just think it's just a little bit premature to be cutting them down when they're healthy. So for that reason, I'm going to vote nay. But the motion will pass. That's fine. People ask me questions. Why are they cutting down healthy trees? And I go, it's part of the plan, but I can't explain to them why they're cutting down healthy trees. If the tree was slightly unhealthy, you could say it's going to die and be dead in 2 to 3 years. You've got a reason to. I mean, I had a maple tree on Meadow Road that I thought was going to be dead in 4 years, and then it came back again, and it's still there. I mean, I was told, it's one of these Norway maples, and they have this virus and blah, blah, blah. In a couple of years, it had reduced leaves, and then it came back and it was fine. But it's still there. So, nature can find a way. We might get eaten to death by this borer, but I just think it's just premature. That's all. I agree with planting, but I think we should delay cutting down for a while.
I really want to find a plan that we can agree upon where we protect a certain number of them. And I'm not sure that saying we won't do anything will make sure that at least a certain number of them will be protected.
Can I ask you, how difficult is it to identify a tree that is obviously being eaten alive by the ash borer and one that is really healthy?
There's pictures that are very easy to identify from kind of year 1 to whatever the last year of that tree's life is, year 10, and it's visible both in the defoliation of the tree, and then upon closer examination, you can see the damage has been done to the bark.
So,
but certainly, to Councilor Emery's point, we can have staff, and we have 2 certified arborists. Not that we have 2 certified arborists that can easily identify groves, to use your word, probably a variety of them throughout city-owned lands, and perhaps when staff returns for the 23 budget presentation, that can be part of the Emerald Ash Borer project discussion.
well, I know in the medical world they triage to take care of the most needy of care. And I'm just wondering, as you wander down whatever the street is that is full of the ash trees, if it's not real difficult to triage, then I would think that makes sense to Tim's point, that you continue to have all the positive things about a tree, carbon sequestration and all sorts of things, shade, cooling, whatever. And then you wait until it appears that it's starting to fail, and then you cut it down. So you have.
I sort of heard in his response that they're doing that. You're attempting to do that by not clear cutting an entire street. You're doing 1 or 2, putting a new one in, and then phasing it in over multiple years, if not a whole decade. So I sort of hear that they're doing what you're describing, Councilor, really.
I thought I heard that that's time consuming, and do we really want them to drive around the community and say, "Oh, there's one that's sick"?
We're not prioritizing our removals by health because, again, we believe they're all roughly equivalent health today. However, if at some point in time, this triage isn't really the right word; it's more diagnosis. If they're
triage,
if they're diagnosed and infected, we move from a reasonable plan that has us dealing with 50 to 100 trees a year to suddenly perhaps being behind the 8 ball and having to react really quickly to a larger number of trees and relying on a contractor community that will realistically probably be trying to help Winooski, Colchester, Williston, Essex, Burlington, etc., do the same. And things may happen. They might engineer. China might engineer a wasp that saves all of our problems, and it's used in forest. To the extent that there becomes a better solution for our street trees, it would be incumbent upon us to continue to be on top of the subject, and every year during the budget season, bring forward those solutions.
I think that's sensible, and I think we can review this. This isn't, you're not doing it all in the next 6 weeks.
We only have about 60 trees that are currently under contract, and that's it until the next budget cycle.
Megan?
And I'm sorry, I don't remember. Is there a cost to the sticky traps?
Isn't that $1,000 a tree?
No,
something?
the pesticides was for 15 trees, $1,000 per year.
We can look into
Let's see.
preservation methods
It's
within.
$2,000 for 4-year use.
We can look into preservation methods within the forested areas,
And that's
traps
for
or
10.
otherwise.
I think because that could be useful to know when they're in the area.
When who's in the area?
The emerald ash borer.
When the insect is.
And
okay.
if they have, I believe it's 10 lures, if I'm remembering correctly, for 4-year use, $2,000. So that's $200 each for 4 years. It would just be good, I think, with regard to planning, with regard to hopefully a goal of preserving at least some, and hopefully they'll be able to come back. I mean, that's the goal of preserving, is that they'd be able to come back. And that seems to be within the whole scope of the project. $200 per lure seems reasonable to me as a singular counselor.
So you're suggesting, Councilor Emmer, that you could put that in the 2023 budget?
I would.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yes. Well, you've already spoken, so I think Michael had his hand up a little bit earlier.
My comment is very quick, and it follows up on what Councillor Barrett said. We need to buy time if we can. Technology is moving very fast. You've probably all read that mRNA technology that's been used to develop the viruses for COVID will have massive agricultural applications in dealing with pests that can't be dealt with in other ways, or shouldn't be dealt with parasites. It's complicated. It's a matter of identifying the protein that the mRNA can attack. But it's coming, and we should try to buy time and not kill healthy trees.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
So if I can try
Yeah,
to summarize
yeah,
here.
try to summarize.
We have a motion on the table to continue this year's segment of the plan that you had previously approved in the CIP. So if you would like, if you choose to do that tonight, at your next meeting, as you know, you'll have your FY23 budget goal setting conversation, and you could move those two recommendations forward to that conversation, both having staff work with the chiefs on a preservation plan and financing to support that, as well as potentially preservation methods for forested areas. So those could be two separate goals within the
That's
FY23.
including the lures, the sticky
Yep.
traps, the lures.
Is that
bifurcated process?
Yeah.
Continue this year, but in the budget next year to do these other things.
That's correct.
Okay. Are we ready for that vote?
Yes.
Sure.
Are you talking about the stickies to find out if it's here?
Yes.
So why would you cut down healthy trees now and then put stickies out in a year or two to find out if it's here? That's like the cart before the horse. I mean, put the stickies out and see if they're here. And then if they are, then you go forward. That's what Montpelier's doing to see if they're. The Montpelier has it. They know the emerald ash borer is there because they put the stickies out, and they also have trap trees. But we don't even know if it's here yet. So, but you're cutting down hundreds of healthy trees in anticipation it's coming. let's find out if they're here yet before you do that. And it takes 2 to 5 years before the tree will die. You can really see when they do. They start from the top. You can see the dead branches. So it's very obvious when the borer is on the tree. It's not subtle. So it,
Well, my understanding is we wouldn't be cutting down hundreds of trees to finish out this year. It's 100 trees per year over 6 years is what I
Give or
understand.
take, yes.
Give or take. And we also heard from Justin that we are competing for the same time and equipment of I mean, they're purchasing equipment, Roseanne. This is part of their plan. And just, I'm sure you've seen it, right? You have a bucket truck, you have a chipper, stump grinder, you have a contract with a sawmill operator. I mean, they're including that all in their budget. So they're doing it. They are doing it, Roseanne. And they're taking down 10% of their trees per year. And sounds like we have the same plan. I understand. Believe me, I love the trees. I've been nursing the maple tree in my backyard since I moved in 20 years ago, and I was told it was dead when I arrived. I understand. I love the trees. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to hear the pressures being put upon us, and I'm trying to at the same time think about how we can have ash trees in the future, right? And I'm trying to find a balance between those things. But believe me, my heart is with the trees. Believe me. I mean,
Are we ready for the vote?
Yes.
Okay. So I believe the motion is to continue with our plan with the understanding that we will revisit this as we look to the FY23 budget development to potentially support the determining if they're here, trying to save 15 trees, doing some sticky, whatever they are, the latest techniques to deal with the ash borer. Is that correct? Is that the direction you need?
Yeah, I think the motion was specifically to restart the program. I think the recommendation, which I think we had support with, generally speaking, was to include those other items in the budget discussions, which will take place at the next council meeting. So that's not in the motion, but certainly it can be. I mean, it's no, I don't think it's. I think we'd all agree that those discussions should take place.
You need it in the motion, Jesse, or are you good?
No, we have a motion. Okay. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So the motion passes 3-2. Okay, moving on to street parking. I think this is easier, Justin.
Good evening. Staff was forwarded an email, I believe, from.
Madam Chair, it's 9:05.
Yes.
Does anybody,
I was on a roll, Tim.
Oh, yeah.
I know
I'm
it, but
sorry.
I'm just questioning whether we should have a break or not, or we can let Justin go first, or.
Is this going to take long? We only.
think so.
Okay, why don't we do this and then have a break and let our note taker stretch her fingers?
Thank you.
Good evening. We're here tonight to discuss parking on Peterson Terrace. We were forwarded an email, I believe it originated with Councilor Emery. And subsequently, myself, the police chief, the director of planning and zoning, and the city manager have met a couple times to discuss just in general, how do we respond to these types of requests? What have we done in the past? What are the existing conditions, et cetera, et cetera. Since that email, both the police chief and myself have made frequent drives through the area. And there might have been one occurrence when there was more than one car parked on the street, but in general, there's 0 or 1 cars that are parked along Peterson Terrace, which in and of itself isn't a street that really lends itself to on-street parking. It's kind of narrow. And the land use, I don't think there's a lot of rentals. So there's not the need for kind of overflow parking. Those were our observations. Certainly we realize that overflow airport parking is airport in general, as well as overflow airport parking is a sensitive issue. After we completed the parking in 2015 that was described in here on Elizabeth and Patrick. One of the outcomes of that effort was the airport beefed up its signage package to alert folks that there is a cell phone lot. But I think even if you knocked on everyone's window who was sitting, on those streets and you told them it was 2 blocks away, they would colorfully tell you to go mind your own business. So the airport's doing what they can. We've been through a couple recent efforts that have just talked about how to deal with when adjacent parking kind of spills into neighborhoods. As mentioned, one was over by the airport on Elizabeth and Patrick, and the other one was a little more recent, over on Brookwood Drive as a result of the new office building and residential apartments at Brookwood and Dorset. Both of those discussions were very intentful on being kind of thoughtful discussions and not just go to the next meeting, propose a parking regulation, have it changed. We didn't want to chase problems down the block or around the corner or on the street. And we also had to do a fair amount of time letting people know that if there's no parking sign in front of your house that you want, that means no parking. So birthday parties, 4th of July's, that means you can't park there. Because our parking regulations do not discriminate between users presently. They could in the future if we have a resident parking model. We don't. So a lot of that discussion, a lot of that kind of like acceptance, particularly on Elizabeth and Patrick, because that's the one I was more heavily involved in. If you notice, if you happen to look on the map there, you're like, well, that's kind of such a mismatch of parking stuff. Well, yeah, it was, because that's what it took to get them all to agree. Eventually, it was just they didn't want parking at night or overnight, any point of the year. So the point of all that being, our recommendation is to continue to monitor the situation, not just on Peterson, but also on Barber and Lynn, to see if staff feels that intervention and regulations are necessary right now based on what we've been observing. And even the anecdotal in the email was 1 or 2 cars a week. I'm not sure if we want to regulate away 1 or 2 cars a week, if that is in fact what is happening. The other cases were a little more severe, but we propose to monitor it. And as well as at the council's discretion, try to come up with, instead of just dealing with these every 3 years as they pop up as one-offs, look around, see what other communities are doing, be it resident parking. Obviously, there's a whole host of things that go hand in hand with resident parking. But tonight, that's our recommend. It's not really an action item, but that's kind of our recommendation based on both our past experiences, but also what we're seeing over on Peterson today.
Okay, comments? Matt, did you want to say something?
Well, as just a new guy question. Have we discussed and then decided not to pursue a residents only signage in some of our neighborhoods that have that challenge, whether it's this neighborhood we're talking about or Brookwood or anywhere else where we find that residents lose their spots on the street to whether it's airports or competing businesses?
I'm not sure if Councilor Chittenden's trying to answer, otherwise I'll answer.
My comment and question is similar to that.
Okay.
So I would say it has come up, and I think I support the staff's recommendation, but I think we as a council need to recognize that this is going to keep coming up more frequently. We are the 2nd largest city in this great state, and the largest city has resident-only parking. I think it makes sense for us to consider it. I know that there are administrative burdens that are related to that, but I anticipate in the next 5 to 10 year horizon that this is going to make sense. I would just add, I'm not against resident-only parking on the next 2 years, but I would want it to be applicable to other parts of the city, exactly as Councilor Coder mentioned, Brookwood and Sherry being of particular interest. So I like what you're supporting, which is continuing to monitor it, and I want to address these concerns. I, as one councilor, think we need to look very closely at what resident-only parking, what that would look like, the process, and the administrative burdens in the coming couple of years.
Yeah, I think when we discussed it the last time, our then city manager suggested that the cost and the enforcement would be hefty. So, but that doesn't mean we can't discuss it or review it again and see if we can.
I think given the timeline that Councilor Chittenden just mentioned,
we could raise the fines in order to pay for the signs.
I think you'll find that we might start growing ourselves, particularly within city center, into the need to create parking turnover, therein having an actual traffic and control parking group, which is the infrastructure you need at its core for residential program. So the demand is going to materialize elsewhere and perhaps for different reasons, but that might allow for a more logical creation of managing parking, whether it's resident only or metered parking
Okay.
on Market Street.
Well, let's include that in our future priorities, you know, it's something to discuss, and I agree with you, as city center gets built out, and there's more and more people who wanna go there, some of the neighborhoods surrounding that may find some more cars parking on their street, much to their chagrin. Okay. Yeah, so we'll include that in the conversations in the future.
Yeah, the concern that came to me, I just want to reiterate it, is that there can be aggressive people who park on these streets. And when residents approach them and you know, this is my lawn, that they can sometimes get a very unpleasant reaction. And that I find to be concerning. You know, that there are cars that actually park on someone's lawn. They're gone for who knows how long, and that there is no enforcement in place. And even if it's one car, and I understand we have to think about it, but I find that to be a story that, you know, I don't want to see replicated.
Sure. I would agree.
Yeah.
There are current enforcement tools that could deal with that specific type of use.
What are those? Because that homeowner was not able to get
Well,
any kind of enforcement.
Well, we don't have them in place, but
Yeah,
that could be part of the
tools.
conversation.
Okay, but not in place, Justin.
Right?
I believe we have the ordinances in place to enforce that. What we don't have in place is a dedicated traffic unit within our police department to do that enforcement. Because we are running so thin on the public safety side, we don't have those officers who are dedicated to that kind of traffic enforcement. So they can respond if there's no other call going on at the time. But if there's any other call going on at the time and 2 or 3 of our officers are at that call, they can't immediately go and address that ticketing issue. So to me, this is a perfect conversation for our policy priorities process to say, what do we want to start exploring and building out over the next year to 2 to 3 years? It will come with added staff and added human resource infrastructure to support enforcement. Does that look like a PD team? Does that look like a traffic and parking team? Does that look like citywide resident only, targeted resident? I mean, there are, having worked in lots of cities with resident parking, there are many ways to do it. It's how we want to best bring forward to you all those recommendations.
All right.
At least in the winter, they'd be towed overnight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that's the good news. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? So, pardon me? Yes. Sure. Woohoo. You'll have till January, but you can do it
yes,
now.
But I might not have
For
another
sure.
chance. I have to say that of all the places I've lived, Justin is by far the best director of public works that I've ever met. He's always on the ball. He always has the facts and figures at his fingertips. He's always accessible and polite and solutions oriented. He's done a fantastic job for the city, and he is going to be sorely missed. And this is just not from me; it's from all my neighbors who've heard about it now. Thank you, Justin.
Okay, so we'll just take a very quick break. Thank you. We'll take up item 12, which is a continued discussion on the South Burlington Land Trust request for a short-term tax increase to be used by the city for the future preservation of open space. It actually isn't a discussion about a specific tax proposal, but rather to have a discussion and to provide the city manager and our legal counsel some ideas about the concept of sending a letter to all of the 25 identified owners of the properties identified by the Open Space Committee that was part of IZ, that throughout the city, it wasn't just the Southeast Quadrant, but all of those properties that were identified as large enough and having significant natural resources on their property, a letter that we would request finding out their interest in meeting with the city to explore the possibility of their interest in having their land purchased or working with other entities that may allow them to take a portion of their parcel and preserve it as identified by the Open Space Committee, to get kind of a baseline, because we keep talking about, is it 4 cents for 4 years? Is it 2 cents for 10 years? Is it just a half a penny, maybe nothing? But we really don't know, since we don't own any of those properties, what the possible outlay might be. So this would be a letter finding out if anyone was interested in chatting with us short term, long term, or absolutely not. We're just not interested. That isn't something we've thought about and want to pursue. The responses to the letter, I think, should be kept confidential, but it could allow us to have a sense of what are the parameters of money that might be needed to discuss with property owners their interest in selling or even gifting land to the city or preserving it some other way. So that's what I would like to propose. And if there's other kind of aspects of that letter or that outreach that council members want to include on that, I think it's an exploratory letter. And I think it needs to come from the city, because we would be the entity that initially we would work with. It's possible you could team up with the Vermont Land Trust or Nature Conservancy or some other organization, certainly, to partner, or the South Burlington Land Trust for that matter. So that's a question I put out there, and I think that will help us focus on what it is we may want to do in terms of generating additional funds and for what purpose, and not just let's just collect some money and see how we can spend it.
I like the idea. I think it's important for us to see that this is our responsibility as a city. If we wish to conserve land, that we have to purchase it. And I think it makes perfect sense to take that step and to reach out to potential partners in that conservation process, to let them know that this is something that the city would seriously consider, and inviting them to investigate future possibilities in a serious discussion. Tom?
So I like the direction you're going in, to try to size up how much we might need to raise to put some more hard numbers, any additional ask before the voters. I guess for me to feel comfortable with a letter, I'd want to see it. I want to see the draft letter before it goes out to the landowners. If you're looking for my vote or my blessing. And for Councilor Emery's point, I agree with you that if we truly want to steer the future of the entire parcel, the city needs to own it. But we do have other tools, which the Planning Commission is working on and is going to be issuing shortly, environmental protection requirements, which will address the portions of these parcels and their environmental aspects that we will be for shepherding and stewarding through appropriate land regulations. So for me to sign off on this, I need to see the letter.
Okay.
I think that given the work of the Open Space Committee, the next logical step, in conjunction with the proposal for money for
4 for 4 or 2 for 10 or whatever it might be. The next logical step is if you've identified the parcels, you should take an action to initiate a dialogue with the parcel owners to gauge their interest in some sort of conservation, whatever, or whether there isn't any interest in it. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I think we should review the letter content before it goes out. It should be confidential on its return. I think it'll generate some very interesting dialogue between the city and some of the landowners initially. I'm sure that there are some people out there that probably are leaning toward conservation, but they probably would like to see some value remuneration. And, you know, this, and it all it is just an invitation to have a discussion with the city about your property and about how we regard your property. And it would start interesting dialogue.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, just mechanics. How do you say keep confidential? The letters would return to.
This is a letter from, in my mind, this is a letter from the city manager on our behalf to reach out to those 25 property owners and find out if they have any interest in exploring with the city conservation of their property.
No, I understand that. I
And
support
so
the idea,
their
but
responses would go back to Jesse, and we would not then have a press release and say, oh, 10 people, and these are the people who want to sit down and chat with us.
So I think we would need, pending this direction from council, we would need to craft the legal authority under which we could keep those outside of public record. It would likely be, not a lawyer, but it would likely be something under the auspices of potential real estate negotiation for the future. So I would likely want to include that citation in the letter that goes out, assuming it can pass legal muster. So we can draft something, bring it back, see if there's a legal ability for us to do that, and then have you sign off on it.
in other words, if the legal structure is there, we would read the letters in executive session.
Correct.
The council would. Okay.
Because you'd have to authorize me and the city attorney to enter into negotiations at some short or medium or long-term time.
I actually don't even know if the letter has to be discussed in executive session, because we will not be looking at the response.
No.
I mean, our position, Matt, is the 25 people that have been identified in that report. Their names are in the report, the owners of those properties. So that's not confidential information. What needs to be confidential in my mind is anyone who responds back and says, yeah, I'd love to sit down with you. I don't want that. I don't think that should be public information, because it wouldn't allow a negotiation or a thoughtful conversation about potentially purchasing property. That should be done in executive session.
And so I guess my question, and this is, I guess I would agree. I think there's a value of sending out this letter and getting this information back, collecting information. I'd want to see the letter, because I think probably, my question is, are we going to ask if they want to sell the whole parcel? Or are we likely to get a response back that says, sure, I'll sell you the part that the planning commission just said you can't develop, but I want to keep the property next to the existing infrastructure, the sewer, the water, so we could develop it. So let's make a deal. I mean, is that another question we're asking? Are you interested in selling all of it, none of it, or part of it?
That's why I want to see the letter, the framing of it, because I don't necessarily want to buy portions of the property that we're already protecting through EPRs. And I don't necessarily want to say, we definitely want to buy your property at whatever price you want to say, but I want to see the wording and get an idea of how this moves forward.
Well, and it doesn't make it so that if they say, I'll only sell all of the property, that the city has to say, oh, okay. I mean, we can say no.
Right.
We have this amount of money. This is what we want to preserve. And they can say yes or no. It's that conversation to explore what are the possibilities.
And there might be a great opportunity there where a landowner says, sure, I'll reduce the size of my project but I will build where we have existing infrastructure, affordable housing, workforce housing, moderate priced housing, and we will make sure that this area of the city goes to this area of my parcel goes to the city and is preserved in perpetuity because it is a valuable piece of property from a perspective of riparian corridors and
Sure.
wetlands.
But that's a possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see what happens really with, I think, the LDRs from the Planning Commission. I mean, we don't want to necessarily undercut that, but I think we want to support that in a way, potentially, that makes the public feel whole. So I don't know what the outcome is,
Yeah.
but you won't know unless you ask and you sit down and have some conversations about what are the opportunities and what aren't. So, do you have a comment from the public? Oh, and one online, okay.
Hi, my name is Linda Bailey, and I am a resident. And wow, from the agenda, I came prepared to talk about some other things than this, so I think it's a little bit unfair to the public to spring this on as a rather different change from the agenda. Not having had time to think things through in detail or anything, my first instinct on this is it would be a bad idea. You'd be setting up expectations of people when you do not yet know what the city as a whole, the public wants to do vis-a-vis raising any money for this. You don't. The vote won't happen until next March. I suspect that you would, like I said, raise up expectations. I think you should hold off on this sort of thing until you know if the city as a whole wants to give you money to spend on this. That's all I can come up with on
I
such short
appreciate your
notice.
comments. I think the point of this was to give us a little more information as well as the public that
But you're
they're.
already saying that this is going to be information that's going to be kept private, that the public
Well,
won't
but we
know.
would know that.
You would know, the public wouldn't.
Well, let me finish the sentence, okay?
Mhm.
If 5 people, let's say, came back and said, yes, we would be interested, we could look at those 5 properties and potentially be able to say, well, it looks like the most we could ever spend on this project is $6 million. That would buy all those properties. So then we would know that's.
I can see where you'd know what you wanted to ask for.
Yes.
I still think it's jumping the gun to do that. And you know the information will from somewhere get out in the world, whether it's the property owners talking or whatever. But I don't
Well,
think this
that's
is going to be a go to begin with. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. We maybe want to ask property owners to keep their response confidential too. You know, that's another. There's someone on.
So Chris Tremblay and Sandy Dooley have both put comments in the chat. I don't think either of you were here at the beginning of the meeting. We are not using chat anymore, only to indicate that you would like to speak and be heard in open so everyone can hear you and you can participate in the debate. So Chris or Sandy, if you would like to unvideo and unmute and share with us your comments, that would be great.
Oh, sorry. I was just, it sounds like such a cool idea to reach out about their interest in conservation. I was only hoping to possibly use the letter as a dual purpose. If they do intend to develop, might they be interested in partnering on an affordable housing portion of that property? If that's out of scope, that's fine. Just, it sounds like a really good opportunity to reach out and understand their intention and build a good dialogue going forward. Thanks.
Good point.
Well, that's a good point. And it potentially could be part of the conversation with whomever comes forward. I mean, I think we'd want to understand what they want to sell their land for and what they want to use the rest of it for before we committed to. Okay, Sandy Dooley, do you want to speak or did Chris say what?
Well, I guess I'm concerned about I understand your intent to support the regulations, but the regulations have not been adopted and fully fleshed out. There will be of course, in Articles 10 and 12 and the related changes, like an expansion of the lands that are protected, plus the conservation PUD is intended to provide an incentive for people to conserve their lands on their own, which would remove the requirement or the need for the city to purchase them. So I guess I just see these conversations as having a potential unintended effect of sort of confusing the process of the and being competitive to the land development regulations that are not yet adopted.
Okay, thank you. Roseanne?
Roseanne Greco, South Burlington. I think it's a great idea. All you're asking, if I understand it correctly, is to reach out to the owners of the parcels which have already been identified as the prime ones you want to preserve, and ask if they're interested in talking to the city, right? I mean, talking, either selling or conserving or not. I mean, I don't see any downside in having a conversation with people. At least you get a better idea where they're thinking on their lands, and you'll know. It's sort of like the cart before the horse. I mean, what comes first? Does the money come first? And then you have money, and then they got, the landowners know you got money? Or do you find out from the landowners how much money you need? And then you can then maybe do a ballot item, or Tom says there's plenty of money in the city you can borrow from yourself. You might not even need that, but it's on the face of it, it sounds like a good way to get information that the city will have to make further decisions. So thank you.
In response to Ms. Bailey too, I mean, that was the request on the part of a couple of councilors at least, that they needed to have more information before they put a dollar amount on the ballot. And that makes perfect sense, right? To be able to have a notion about how much to ask and to have not necessarily raised expectations. This is simply surveying interest, and I see that as a useful tool. And as regards competition, I don't see it as competition. The Planning Commission is very clear that they cannot regulate full conservation of any parcel. So if these parcels have the sensitive natural resources on it that we do wish to conserve in total, it's not competition. It's simply saying this is the city, putting its money where its mouth is. And I see that as a very responsible act. And it's something that the Planning Commission itself has raised as the only way to conserve a parcel. I don't see it as competition. I see it as a tool, and it's a tool that the city has in its power, and we're simply, I think, planning in a way that some councilors on this board had expressed as a need to have figures before we go to the public and ask for money. So I see what you're proposing, Helen, to be responsive to what members of this council have expressed. Tom.
So I think we have some direction that we can move forward on this. I just want to make clear that I don't necessarily want to acquire all 25 of these parcels as one counselor. I just want to understand. I think I'm open to understanding, since they were identified and we've already had relationships with them, what they're thinking. And that's why I want to see the language of this. But I don't want to communicate that the entire council, unless the majority and wants to have the language that way, that we want all 25 in entirety, these 25 parcels to be entirely conserved in perpetuity. I don't want that. I don't think that's the right thing for South Burlington, and so I don't want the letter to inadvertently convey that. But if I'm in the minority in that position, that's why I just want to see the language. So I'm ready to conserve some of them. I think if it makes sense, but when I say conserve, I want the city to own it so that we can also use it for a soccer field. I want soccer fields for South Burlington. So I want to be strategic in understanding what we might be purchasing so that I can go to the voters in unison, in unanimous support, and asking for a certain amount of money to fund those acquisitions.
Okay. Sarah? Doc? Well, it might give us that information, and that's all I'm asking. I cannot imagine, knowing who the owners are of some of the property, that all 25 would say, count me in. That just won't happen. Sarah?
Sarah Dopp. I wasn't going to say anything. I thought you were doing fine with the conversation, and the audience comments were good. But when I hear soccer fields on the 25 parcels that were identified for conservation of the environment, that doesn't work for me. So I just had to stand up and say, this isn't about recreation land this time. We've already agreed among ourselves, some of us more than others, that some of the current conservation fund can be used for recreational purposes, not all. But what the land trust was proposing was money for environmental conservation. Just wanted to be clear on that.
Okay, so do you have the direction you need? Okay, thank you. All right, item 13 is this submitting nominations for the Small Town America Civic Volunteer Award. I brought this up last time. I put a call into them to find out if you can make a nomination posthumously, and they said yes. So I would like to begin the process of nominating for this award Jennifer Kochman. I think she has done an incredible amount. What's going to be challenging for me is to limit or figure out exactly how many of the areas that she's been involved in we should highlight. But I'll work on that, and we actually can do a second one. Each community can nominate 2. So if anyone has thought about another person, I guess dead or alive, you can, we can submit 2. But I feel very strongly that this is a way that I think would be really nice to honor Jennifer.
You need a motion?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's just, it asks who's going to be the nominator. I could, I suppose, say the whole city council, if that's what you would propose.
You can put my name down, Helen.
Okay, and it asks, if the government head, I think, supports it as well. So I will work on this. It isn't due till October 15th. So I have a little bit of time to think about it. But great, if that seems amenable, great, thank you.
And would we submit some things to you or ideas, or how you'll inform us how you'd like us to support your efforts?
I'm going to look at some of there's only one thing about, please describe how the nominee's service has significantly impacted your locality and explain why their contributions are considered above and beyond. That's the only real thing that is of substance. So they have some examples online. I will look at them and see how much people and what they kind of said, and then I'll probably ask for some feedback. Okay, great, thank you. So item 14, discussion and approval for the FY23 budget schedule. So Martha's going to talk about that, and Jesse.
Yep. So I'm going to table set just for a moment, and then Martha is really the one. If folks haven't met Martha Machar before, Martha is our brilliant finance officer. She's the one who has built this budget. There are 2 things I wanted to highlight from a vision perspective, and then we'll turn over to Martha for the details. So tonight we're asking you to approve the FY23 schedule. At the next meeting, we'll come back and have the goals conversation. So the 2 changes I'm recommending with this schedule are to integrate the CIP discussions into the general fund, all fund budget conversations. I feel like one of the things I've observed is that conversation between investment in capital and maintenance has been disconnected, and I would like to join those two conversations. And then I also recommend having 3 nights of budget presentations as they're outlined here. This process, I think, will allow you to have the best comprehensive picture of city finances, city priorities, especially coming out of the policy priorities conversation. So Martha can walk you through the specific schedule that is outlined here. And get really close to the mic.
Hi, Martha Machar, Finance Officer, City of South Burlington. The budget schedule this year is a little different as stated by the city manager. In the past, we have presented CIP capital improvement projects separately from the general budget, but this year we are trying a new system introduced by the new city manager, and we hope that it will work well. And we will prepare the CIP separately, but present it together with the general budget at the same time. And instead of doing the whole budget the same night, we have separated out as indicated by the city manager, and we will have the general administrations nights and culture and recreations. We will also have the public safety, public services, and community development projects that will be presented during the 3-night city council meeting, regular city council meeting. And in addition to those, we'll just have 1 night of a public hearing where the city council will approve the both CIP and general budget. I am here to answer any question if you have.
I have a question. In terms of sort of dividing them up in these 3 sections, is that sort of about equal dollars? Is that why you did some of it, or is it more that you think they're more connected? I don't know.
It's not exactly equal dollars, but it is equal areas. And we bundle these together because of their connection.
Okay.
So general government will do a high-level overview of the budget with culture and recreation, public safety, police and fire. Obviously, those connections are intertwined. And then public services infrastructure connected with the other community development projects, I think, is an important linkage.
Okay.
And
That
Martha
makes sense.
recommended bringing in like the energy projects to those conversations as well.
To all of them.
To the 3rd night with the community development.
Oh, I see.
project.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it makes sense. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, yeah. Do you need a motion?
I would appreciate
Yeah,
it.
to approve, I'll move that we approve the fiscal year 23 budget schedule.
Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Passes
Martha,
5-0.
for your work.
Thank you. All right. So item 15, approve a voting delegate for the Vermont League of Cities and Towns Town Fair.
So I believe you all have done this before. Town Fair is September 29th. I'm getting.
We haven't done this
We've
before.
never done-
Wow.
None of us.
I've been.
You've been,
just
you've been,
because,
okay.
and no, you haven't, but as a legislator.
Town Fair is this year, September 29th is the main day of all of the annual meetings of the league. And then the following week is a virtual Town Fair event where you can sign up for or you can attend different virtual seminars. You all are welcome to register and attend for any and all of it. We have training money in the budget to do that, and I'd be happy to share that information with you. What this item is really about is that each community in Vermont, all communities currently are members of VLCT, have a voting member at the annual meeting on the 29th. And so you as the elected body need to delegate who that voting member is. I will be in attendance, so I'm happy to do it. I've done it in past years, but if one of you would like to do it, I also am happy not to do it. I will be there anyway.
I think Kevin did it for us before.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you ought to do it. or
Yeah.
At the very least, Andrew.
Wait a minute. Aren't you running for leadership?
I am
She is.
running.
So can you?
yourself?
Vote for yourself, yeah. I mean, I authorize you to vote for yourself, but I would support you voting for yourself.
That's
but
during,
can you do that?
middle
By
school.
laws, yes.
Remember you were told you could never
Yeah,
vote
that's
for
right.
yourself? I think.
Wait, you can vote for yourself?
You guys don't do that? Right.
I
City
can.
council
There's
elections,
no
you can.
bylaw. There is no bylaw against that.
Okay.
If it's
Okay.
with your
Not
Well, I would like
We're
to
all on the record of
nominate-
supporting you
I
running for
would like
leadership.
to
so-
delegate Jesse Baker as our voting delegate for the VLC.
And I'd like to give her permission to vote for herself.
Exactly. I would encourage her. I give her permission and encourage her to vote for herself.
So that's a motion. I
Yes.
will second that motion, Helen.
Okay, any further discussion or advice?
No, you're great.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Item 16, appointing Colin K. McNeil Esquire
What's the K
as
for?
the city attorney. What is it? Kerry?
Kerrigan.
Kerrigan. Well, that is another Irish name, huh? You're 100% there. Yeah, that's
Another
great.
Irish name.
Yeah, I'll say.
Writing that
So,
down.
can I take this over?
Yes, please do.
Um,
I'm sorry.
So I'm very excited to have Colin here with us tonight for your consideration for appointment to city attorney effective September 13th. You and the community have a memo in front of you about this recommendation. We did a very thorough search. We had a number of candidates. We interviewed 6 first round, 3 second round, and it was unanimous that Colin was our top choice. I think many of you know Colin as our outside counsel over a number of years. He's also served many other municipalities and school districts over the last 13 years that he's been with McNeil, Leddy, and Sheehan. And what really stood out for me in recommending Colin was not only his municipal law expertise and familiarity with Vermont, but his strong core of ethics and service. And I think South Burlington will be very well served under his leadership. So I would request that you appoint Colin K. McNeil, Esquire, as city attorney for the city of South Burlington effective September 13th.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Oh, do you want to say anything?
Yeah.
Maybe I should let you say something.
Keep it short.
Very short.
Yeah,
No, absolutely.
yeah.
I just appreciate your consideration. Thank you. I would look very much forward to being your next city attorney. Thank you.
That sounds good.
That sounds good. Well, I think you will be. It's very tense vote. Do we need to do a roll call on this? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. So, 5-0. Welcome. Thank you so much.
You know what you're getting into, Colin.
It does, yeah. Good enough. Okay.
Thank you.
We'll be seeing you later.
He's sticking around.
Item 17, reports from councilors on committee assignments.
Madam Chair, there's no other business on the agenda tonight, so if there are no reports from committee assignments, I just have one tiny item while Paul is here about
Okay.
business.
Are there any committee assignment reports? I don't have one.
One
Okay.
brief one.
Oh, brief one.
Positive news.
Positive news. Oh, good.
We
We
have
like
agreement
positive
with
news.
GMT avoiding a strike, so we're hopeful that we'll get that resolved next week,
Great.
and there'll be no interruption in buses.
Super. Okay. Thank you. Tim.
So, if you didn't know, like a week ago Sunday, I was hacking and slashing the bike path near on Wheeler. So I cut a nice shape of all the overhanging trees and stuff. I happened to be on my bike coming back from a BCA appointment, and I got whacked in the head, so I cut it. And then I just kept cutting. Then I kept cutting. Then I cut it all the way up to Fulsham Farm Road.
Do you carry those things?
No,
on your-
I had a pair of clippers in my hand. I even have a
Use the
blister from
machete
it. So.
for
But the point
defense.
is that I got next to Paul Heald's old house, and his face is outside on the wall here. He's the one that owned the yellow house that's
Yeah,
completely
yeah.
covered in wisteria now. And a couple came by, and we were talking about it. And they were like, "Well, who owns this house, or who owns it now? What's the future of it? You know, does the city have any ordinances against abandoned houses?" And we went through this several years ago. So the question is, I mean, can we talk at a future date about that property? It's not that it's a blight on the city, because actually it's overgrown now and you really
Can
can't
hardly
see it
see it,
anymore.
yeah.
But it creates a bigger question as to why hasn't the landowner either decided to demolish the building, resell the property? Because obviously with the 5 homes that have been built across from the golf course recently, that land is desirable.
Mhm.
So it should not return to fallow, and it's got a crumbling foundation of a barn behind it, because if you go down to Folsom Farm Circle
Yeah,
behind it,
yeah.
you can see the rest of the decay going on.
It's
So.
a safety hazard. I mean, some kids are gonna walk in there. And,
Right.
and
Well, they could.
Well, Paul is deceased, so I don't know. He's been dead for, I don't know, 10 years.
10
I
years,
bet.
yeah.
Trust owns it.
So I
don't
don't know if his estate is in some kind of litigation. I mean, he was unmarried. He didn't have children. I mean, maybe he had siblings. That I don't know. I mean, I knew him, but not that well.
This reminds me of the Kmart shopping plaza, and when it was just a blight and rotting into the ground. Kevin, we charged him. He just kept asking the owners, "What is going on with this?" Because it's an eyesore. There was concerns about water leaking in. So I share the safety concerns, and if the city manager can do something, it's a blight. I don't think it looks nice, and all the windows are not boarded up. And I thought we talked about a regulation where you
They're boarded
have to
a long
board
time
the
ago.
windows up, and I don't know where that went, but maybe Paul has something to offer on that in a future meeting.
Anyways, just bring
Happy
it
to
up
research
for
it.
general discussion at maybe
Okay,
a future
well,
date.
let's see what we can
Obviously,
find
they're
out
paying their property
about it
taxes.
and do something before it burns down, or we have
Well, it's
people
too moist
living
to
in
burn
it.
down
you
now.
know.
Someone's been paying property taxes, obviously. So we have a
Obviously.
contact, even if the owner's deceased.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Item 18, consider entering executive session for two purposes.
Three.
Oh,
Yeah.
three, sorry, that's right. Discussing the Washburn conditional use approval Myers Court appeal, to which the city is a party, and we need to receive confidential attorney-client communications regarding the same. B, discussing the Burton Corporation higher ground application under Act 250 review, again, to which the city is a party, and receive confidential attorney-client communications regarding the same. And finally, to
Personnel.
discuss a personnel issue.
So I
And
move
so
that we
who
go
would-
into premature general and public knowledge of the following would put the city at a substantial disadvantage, because the city council risks disclosing negotiation strategy if these items were discussed in public for the three items that you just mentioned.
Second.
Who would be joining us? Don't we have to identify that?
That's the second.
Not yet.
Oh, that's the second one. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So I now move that we enter into executive session to discuss the aforementioned topics under Title I, Section 313A1CE and 313A3 of the Vermont statutes, inviting city council, city manager, Jesse, and
External City Council, Colin McNeil and Paul Connor for the first one, Colin and myself for the second one, and just me for the third.
Okay, that was a motion. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we will not be making any decisions, so we will not be coming back into session.